like to call the meeting to order. At this time, Councilman Angela, would you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Will the clerk please do the roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown.
Here.
Mayor Hogue. Councilmember Morrison.
Here.
Councilmember Randalls.
Present.
Councilmember Raymond.
Here.
Okay, at this time, we're going to do public participation. Would you please limit it to 3 minutes? And right now, we have the speakers are speaking on things that are not on the agenda. I have Oak Lane Survey. I don't have a name, but could you please come forward and state your name and where you live?
Good evening. I'm Alicia Spring. I live at 126 Oak Lane. Back in October, I think it was, the city of Cape Canaveral hired John Campbell to do a survey of the Oak Lane Road. As you already know, a previous bad survey of land on one side of the road has caused multiple problems and resulted in several lawsuits. The city would like to have a once and for all proper survey to follow. I applaud those efforts, and especially thank Mr. David Dickey for inviting us to meet with him. We met with Mr. Dickey, attorney, he taught me how to say this, Garganese, is that right? Kind of? And the surveyor, John Campbell, last Wednesday. Unfortunately, some of the homeowners are out of town right now and couldn't be with us, but several of us were there. We had been given a copy of the survey a couple of weeks ago and were able to measure it against the deeds it cites. We found multiple errors in that survey, some of them glaring. I brought up these issues at the meeting last week. Mr. Campbell seemed confused by my questions and was unable to cite proper information about the deeds he listed on his own survey. Again, to Mr. Dickey's credit, he invited me to submit a list of errors to the city, which I have done today, and I also copied all of you on that email, so you too have that list. Eventually, a final copy of the survey will come to you for approval. I hope that you'll check it against those list of errors and that you will find that those have been corrected before you approve a final copy. If we have a nice, clean, fresh, accurate copy of a survey for Oak Lane, we can all move forward, finally, with a smooth and constructive relationship. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, at this time, we have a presentation of proclamation declaring the week of May 18th through 25th, 2009 as National Safe Boating Week to William Gears and Commander Lou Bernice, Flotilla 17-6, 7th District, United States Coast Guard Auxiliary. This time I'm going to go ahead and read the proclamation. Official proclamation, City of Cape Canaveral, Florida. Whereas the recreational boating season is approaching its maximum activity, Florida leads the nation in registered vessels with approximately 1 million and with over 22 million boaters using and enjoying the Florida's beautiful waterways annually. And whereas approximately 650 boaters die each year, with Florida leading the nation in annual boating accidents and deaths, the leading cause of death, at 84.5% being drowning even with strong swimmers, and 70% of operators involved in accidents have no formal boater education. And whereas the National Safe Boating Council and the United States Coast Guard Auxiliary is kicking off its 2019 Wear It Safe Boating campaign to educate the boating community about wearing life jackets, taking the About Boating Safety course, having their boats receive a safety examination for the required equipment, and promoting other safe boating practices. And whereas Brevard County has a multitude of organizations involved in helping to educate the public, including the United States Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard Auxiliary, the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, the United States Sail and Power Squadrons, and the Brevard County Sheriff's Office Agriculture and Marine Units, who are all emphasizing getting a vessel safe check, displaying the safety seal, always wearing a life jacket, and attending a classroom version of About Safety to attain their Florida boating license. And whereas those who have taken the classroom version of About Boating Safety given by the Coast Guard Auxiliary and or U.S. Power Squadrons have less than 1.9 fatality rate, and whereas these organizations offer educational opportunities to the public, not only during Safe Boating Week, but throughout the year, using methods including but not limited to vessel inspections, safe boating classes, hands-on training, knot tying, GPS classes, flare use, boating guide pamphlets, fire extinguisher seminars, educational exhibits at marina openings and boat shows, classroom presentations, and in-water life jacket demonstrations. Now, therefore, I, Robert Hogue, Mayor of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, do hereby proclaim the week of May 18th through 25th, 2009 as National Safe Boating Week, and urge all boaters to wear life jackets, learn more about safe boating practices, always act responsible while on or near the water, and take a safe boating class. Signed and sealed this 14th day of May, 2019. Robert Hogue, Mayor.
Thank you so much, Mr.
Thank you.
Really appreciate your support.
Thank you. Thank you. I think you want to get a picture. You want to get a picture? Want to stand up here and get?
Take a picture? I think we should
You
have
want
a
to hold this?
proclamation,
Yeah.
so nice.
Yeah. I'll go ahead and hold this proclamation.
step away from
Yeah,
the
let's step
podium?
away.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I ask Commander Lou and William a question? I, like the rest of us up here, was totally unaware of what all your auxiliary does. But tell me where you meet. Is it still over in Cocoa at the house there on the corner?
No, unfortunately, sir, that building has been razed. It's under new development by the city of Cocoa.
Where are you now?
We are now located at the Brevard Veterans Center over on Cypress Creek Parkway. We meet the second Tuesday of the month at 7 p.m., which is preceded by a little social hour from 6 to 7. You're all welcome to attend, any of you at all. And we'll bring someone here to that meeting.
Wow. Thank you for the plug, because I knew you weren't there, because that's gone in Cocoa, the old Coast Guard station. But thank you. Now I know where you're at.
Well, we've been serving Brevard County since 1958. We've been here just as long as the Massac has.
61 years, just about. Not us, but 61 years.
Wow. Thank you for all you do on behalf of the council up here. Thank you.
Certainly appreciate the recognition. We really appreciate
Thank you.
the support and partnership.
And your understanding, we have to split off to make our next meeting.
Okay. You're welcome to stay, but you probably got 3 more places to be, so unless you want to stay here with us the rest of the evening, you're welcome to slip out. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Is there anyone else? Okay, moving forward to consent agenda. Does the council have any items? We have items 1 through 4 that they request being pulled.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I would like to pull item number 2, please.
Okay, item number 2 is pulled.
Mr.
Can I
Chair,
get a-
if there's no other desire to pull it, I would move that we approve items number 1, items number 3 and 4 of the consent agenda.
And I second it.
Can you poll for a vote?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue, Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond.
4.
Okay, item number 2, consent agenda. Councilman Morrison.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Item number 2 jumped out at me, and anytime we see a fee increase, I think that it's worthy of a discussion. I don't particularly like to see fee increases on the consent agenda, and just so as a point of matter, I'll probably always pull these items. I think that as a council, we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that we understand it. I want to, first of all, thank staff for preparing, I believe, a good economic analysis that allowed me to understand comparatively what's happening and all the strike-throughs on exactly what will be increased. And, you know, we're not into the budget yet, but while what I struggle with is when I sent out an email to the public, to the citizens of this community, I've got nearly 100 people who's replied who oppose this fee increase. And I have a hard time moving forward with that alone. I'm open to listen to the council and or staff on why we think this is a good idea, but I do not believe that we have a problem here. I think that we need to stay competitive with our fees, and we need to allow people to continue to use these services at where they are. I don't think that the number is substantial enough for me to go either way. But when I look at it, there are some big jumps in here. I don't know what it averages out across the board, but I feel like anytime we have a fee increase, that's something that I feel like we can press down in other areas, and it might make sense for us to bring this back when we get into the budget workshops here in the future. But as of today, I'm just feeling a lot of opposition in the public for this, and open up, Mr. Chair, to anyone who wants to comment. So.
Councilman Raymond.
I'd like to see, I don't have it here on the monitor, but I would like to see the changes. I'd like to see the changes. Do you have that graph that you gave us?
If Mayor Pro Tem, may I speak briefly? I'll be very brief. I think the issue isn't so much as a fee increase. Currently, the Community Development Department is being subsidized by the taxpayers of the city, and they're subsidizing the growth and development that occurs within the city of Cape Canaveral. And what we're proposing is simply to reduce the amount of the general government ad valorem tax revenue subsidy that goes to the building department. We recognize that to remain competitive with what's going on around us, if that is the council's overarching goal, we also recognize that it's absolutely unfair to ask the general taxpayers of the city of Cape Canaveral to subsidize the developers of the city on their development projects, building permits, planning and zoning costs for plan reviews, etc. So is it really a tax increase? I say no. It's an adjustment of fees and charges to keep those that are not impacting the service from having to pay for something in Cape Canaveral that they do not receive. And I think that's a fundamental fairness issue. And even with the changes, we still do not solve the problem. It will take a number of years to fully correct the situation of the subsidy. But that's the rest of the story here.
Compared to other cities, Mr. City Manager, how do we fare as far as our fees, and especially our surrounding cities?
We did provide the council with information on the fees and the agenda cover sheet that indicates some of the fees and charges of other surrounding cities. I think that the law regarding building departments and fees and charges for building-related fees by the state of Florida drives you to, in a sense, spend all of the money collected for the services of the building department and related. In this particular case, we are still not achieving that. And again, historically, the city has subsidized that through taxpayer dollars. So even though you're not having any new construction at your property, you're not building a new hotel or a new restaurant or a new condo or some facility, the general taxpayer of the city of Cape Canaveral is subsidizing that growth and development. That will continue under the proposed fee increase. It will just be reduced somewhat. And the huge increase is approximately just a little over $40,000 in new revenue that gets applied to the builders and the developers, not the actual citizens of the city, unless they do choose to build a new home, or if they choose to do an addition or such thing as that. The council needs to be reminded that historically, when we issue free permits for a period of time after each major storm, and we've done that twice for a relatively extended period of time. So we have historically waived those building permit fees for the residents and the businesses too, for that matter, that are repairing their properties to come back into being code compliant properties.
Well, I support it, and I support this ordinance because I really don't want to pay more taxes as a homeowner. And I feel that this does not take into account the average citizen. The average citizen is not usually affected by this whatsoever. It's mostly the developers, the big developers. And I don't want to pay more taxes, and I'm sure that most of our citizens don't want to pay more taxes right now. And I think the developers, they want to develop the property, they want to build a big hotel, then they need to pay for that privilege of building a hotel here in our city. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, may I address it, please?
Yes.
Mine may be a little more lengthy, but hopefully it's a little more expansive. My information comes from the agenda that we have that was given to us, as we all received. And I'll give you some points that I was able to pick out of here. In August of 2017 was the last, and to my knowledge, the only time we have adjusted the fees. Prior to that, it was some 30 years, if I'm reading this right, since we adjusted the community development fees. And over the past 4 years, there's been an inflation. But the important thing, I think, is it's important to note that in this week's, well, I didn't get this week's. This is last week, so I couldn't get on the computer. But you probably read this. It's the weekly update. I don't think many of us actually realize the amount of construction that's going on in this community in the past few months. And I'm reading from the May 13th weekly update, and you probably have read it, so it's nothing new. And under the building department, if you can, I'll read slow so you can perhaps digest this, because the building division, this is in a week, past week. We get this every week. It's available on the internet. The building division conducted 61 inspections. Did I have the right number? I'm reading it, so I probably, and completed 10 plan reviews. That's when a developer comes in with a new plan and says, here's what I would like to do. I want you to review it, see what's needed, let me observe it. The division also processed 37 new building permit applications. That's in a week, that's not a year. This week, people have discovered that maybe Cape Canaveral is the place that they want to build, locate, build a business or whatever. We've had 33 payments from permits that were picked up. One of the things we're doing in this is, I won't say catching up, but we've looking at code enforcement of what we've done. We've done a lot, developing a new, more efficient one. But some of the items that I think I'd like to touch on is in the package that we all had to review. And we're in the process of upgrading some software. have been using the software that goes back to, and I don't have the date on this, but it's 2007. A lot has changed since 2007 in the way of code enforcement, building permits, wind impact. As the city manager alluded to here, we are looking at the users of the servers, and that would be the new businesses that come in. Currently, there's 6 hotels that we're the code enforcement and building officials out there checking on. And I just touch on a couple other things, which is enlightening in the package that we received, and I'm repeating that. But new business account fees, that's a business, it used to be called occupational license. Well, that was a misnomer because people would pay their $15 or whatever it was and say, I'm a plumber. Here's my license from Cape Canaveral. Well, it just don't exist. That's a permit. It's nothing more than a business tax, to be honest about it. It's the communities collect that to maintain the code enforcement, to maintain the business tax receipts. 2015, I'm on page 2, if you're following along with the agenda, we had 51 new businesses come into the city. 2016 and 17, we had 190 new businesses. The past record that we have a record for is 2017 and 18. We had 339 new business receipts comes in. Now, you say, well, that's good. Okay, so you made $15, $20, $30 on each one of them. But in here in the next page, I'm going to go to page 4 because this is what the business tax receipt person has to do. And most of us have never seen it and don't realize it. When you apply for a new business tax, they have to review the application to determine the accuracy and the sufficiency. They have to confirm that the property is within the city by search of the Brevard County property appraiser. Third thing, they have to determine if the applicant is properly listed as a limited liability company. Fourth, they have to determine if the applicant holds a state license through an online search. Takes a little time, but it gets done. They have to put all this information into the system. They assign an application proper business class, depending on what the person is doing. They confirm the correct address, they scan all the paperwork, then they distribute to all the departments to include zoning, building, and fire. They print out the BTR, which is business tax receipt, and call the applicant to pick it up. Then they process the payment through Springbook. We currently have charged $30 for that. No, I'm correct. We're going up to $30.
Yes, there is no charge for that now.
It's what?
There is
No
no
charge.
charge. That's why we're proposing one.
Okay.
And the council may remember, and I'm sure you do,
Okay.
Councilmember Randalls, is the state has preempted us in some areas of BTRs.
Okay. But does a business tax receipt to what's recorded here?
We're trying to capture the cost
That's
of
exactly
providing
right.
that service to the new business.
Well, I support it, you can see, because otherwise, we've added new code enforcement officers, we've added certified people preparing this. It takes about 2 hours to prepare that. And we're saying that the user, whatever the user fee is, if you want to do something, it's not going to be passed on to the residents like Councilwoman explained. So I support this. I think it's reasonable. This is only the second time in 34 years we've done this. I think it's an appropriate need. Thank you, Mr.
Councilman
Chair.
Morrison.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you all for your comments there. Just a couple of replies to that. We set a budget. One of the biggest budgets, if not the biggest budget in the history of Cape Canaveral, got passed last year and had a very healthy contingency in there. I don't remember the exact number, but maybe $1 million, if my memory is correct. Maybe I'm a little heavy. Okay. And when you add all the funds, I think it gets up closer to that point. And what I wrestle with is all of this was factored in the budget that we passed. And right before we get into the next budget, we're going to move and do this fee increase. Now, you can look at a fee any way you want, but it is a tax, and these people aren't foreign to Cape Canaveral. They live here, and they're going to make decisions with their property, whether it's a lot split. So it's the people, the residents, who will end up paying. So while we say we have a lower millage rate, there's all of these fees. At one point, we didn't pay for reclaimed water. Now we do, and it etches up every single year. And now I've heard about a code enforcement officer that we've just hired. That's news, but I don't know if
It
that's
shouldn't be news because the council said code enforcement is a very high priority for the city.
Yeah.
And-
So how many
and
code enforcement officers do we have now?
We have two code
Okay.
enforcement officers.
And at one point, we had 2.5, and I wanted more than that. And so my
and
issue...
we're trying to
excuse
get
me.
another one, please, if I may answer your question.
That's fine, but the budget supported 2.5 code enforcement officers. And now we're operating with 2 less, and we need more money. If we took a few line items and talked about business tax receipts, fine. Maybe we just increase the business tax receipt that we're not charging for. But to do an across-the-board raise, to me, is a bit much. Angela, I'm with you on not wanting to pay taxes, and I think that that's the sentiment of anyone within the community to the most part. But when we talk about not wanting to pay taxes, if the proposal is that we're going to shave off $42,000, why don't we just table this when we get into the budget, and then you show me where we're actually going to take $42,000 out of the budget and give real tax savings to our citizens? That is something that I would get on board with. In regards to growth, Rocky, excellent numbers, and a credit to the staff. This growth is happening because we are competitive with our fees, because we need to make it as easy as possible for business owners and residents to do business here, to make improvements to their properties. And if we etch up over time, I don't see it being there. To me, this timing of this fee increase is a little too early before the budget. 100 citizens, that's a lot for this community to reach out. You see the room today. People are passionate about this community, and they were very, very clear on any fee increase with this, and they said no on 2. And for those reasons, I can't support this. Thank you. Okay.
But with all due respect, there is a big difference between a fee and a tax. As a homeowner, I pay my property tax, but the fee is for someone to do business in the city, to build a hotel or to run a particular type of a business. There's a significant difference.
Yeah,
Thank you.
there's residential fees all through here. Mechanical new residential unit, residential lot split. That's my point. It's an across the board.
Okay, can we
raise, so.
move on? I just have a few things to say. One thing that makes Cape Canaveral so appealing is we do have one of the third lowest millage rate in Brevard County, and only cities that have a lower one are, we're talking about Grant, Valkyria, and cities like that. But just look at the cities that are right next to us, like Satellite and Cocoa Beach, and the reason their fees or their millage rate is high is because they're not doing what we're doing. I'm all in favor of keeping our property taxes at the current level they are. And I think at this point, we need to go ahead and, unless there's somebody who wants to add something else, we need to go ahead and see if we can get a motion.
I think we need to call a question.
But we need to do a motion.
One moment. Okay. I move that we move forward with resolution number 2019-05.
Chair, Randall will support that with a second. And I expound on that if I may. Just mentioned that the fee is different than a tax, and it certainly is. If I want to use the recreation handball court, there's a fee. If I don't want to use it, I don't pay for it. So
Okay.
it's a user fee.
Okay, we're going to go ahead with the motion, Commissioner. Okay. City Clerk, can we get the roll call?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue, Councilmember Morrison,
Against.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond.
Or,
Okay, we're going to move on to public hearings, and I see we have a lot of cards. Let's have the first person that we're going to have speak.
Well, let me read them.
Wanna read
the
them?
ordinance.
He needs to
You're going to read the motion for ordinance first. Go ahead.
Okay. We have a series of public hearings. The first public hearing is ordinance number 09-2019, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending Section 110-28 of the City Code related to due process and special local notice requirements for certain zoning hearings, providing for the repeal of prior and consistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is second and final reading of this ordinance. As the title indicates, the ordinance proposes modifications to local public notice requirements for certain zoning hearings as required by the city zoning code. There haven't been any changes since first reading. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, let's open it up for the council for discussion. Councilman Raymond.
I support this change. Again, it's moving forward. It's 2019. I believe that first-class mail takes care of the issue. I've polled a lot of people. This weekend I was in the pits for the boat races. I was invited there. And I started polling some people from out of state. I wanted to hear what they thought about certified mail. And at that point, most of them said, we're not home usually to even sign. And I know that means going to the post office. But I think the best thing that I heard when we discussed this the first time around is from Mayor Randalls. And Mayor Randalls spent his entire career as a postman. And he said to us, first-class mail is it. And this is the way to go, first-class mail. I use first-class mail. I have really received very few certified mails. The only time I think maybe criminals receive certified mail, I have no idea. I mean, I don't know. I've never gotten certified mail in my entire life. And of course, I've never been subpoenaed to court. So I don't know about this. But as a homeowner, I've never received this. And I have been involved, and I've been a homeowner for 45 out of 50 years that I've been married. And I asked people down in the pits from different states, what do you think about certified mail? And they said it's ridiculous, for many things. And I understand that businesses sometimes have to use this. If you're a lawyer, I imagine this is important. If you're a criminal, this is important. But to the average homeowner, I really think that our first-class mail is fantastic. And Mayor Randall supported this also. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, Rocky.
If indeed, this is the second reading, we've had the first reading. And my agenda that we all have, a couple of things I'll share with the community and the audience. Thanks for turning my green light on. In addition to any notice requirements provided by the state law, now the state, we could just say we're going to take whatever they do. They don't send certified letters. All public hearings under this article shall be publicly noticed for at least 14 calendar days. The notice shall include the address of the subject property, matter to be considered, the date, the place of the hearing. The city shall post notice of the public hearings in the following manner. We post it on the property, post it on the city hall, the city's website, notifying all owners of real property, include home centers. All notices required by the subparagraph may be sent by, this is what we're saying, may be sent by regular mail, except that public hearings related to applications for rezoning shall be sent by certified mail, return receipt. Now, the real difference is the difference between the cost of a regular postage of $50 or $52 or whatever it is, and a certified letter is $7.50. And there's a time and a need for that because you can put a return receipt on it, and the carrier attempts delivery to you if you're home, and you can either refuse it, you can say, I'll pick it up later, or you can accept it, whichever. But if you're not home, we leave a notice. In turn, then you go to the post office and see who it's from and decide, ooh, I want it or I don't want it. But what has happened now is we got a little over 700 residential properties in our community that is built in commercial zones. Kind of a staggering amount. We have to change the zoning because they were legal when they got a special exception or however they got it, and most of us along A1A and North Atlantic Avenue. So we're in the process. We hired East Central Florida Region Planning Council to come over. And the cost of sending these out is $37,500 for the certifieds. But the city attorney has prepared the attached ordinance to revise that. And basically we're saying all these things there. The purpose of the ordinance was to save the money of notifying that. And at the April 16th, 2019 meeting, the council passed ordinance first at the thing. And on this, we related to subdivisions, which is kind of our way of saying what's the other people doing. We took a poll of Cocoa Beach, Melbourne, Palm Bay, Rockledge, and Satellite Beach. And if I'm reading this correctly on page 2 of 3, none of the 7 cities polled send notices by certified mail.
Okay, thank you, Rocky.
Well, that. Because we're within the law. Well, yeah.
Okay. Councilman Morrison?
Yep. Thank you. So what's interesting here is I'm about fairness, and any time we want to do to ourselves, to the government, if you will, that we would, not impose on a private citizen, I have a problem with that, and I think I've stayed consistent. This fee has been, the applicant, if you wanted to go do a rezoning as a private party in the past, you had to pay the $7.50 estimated cost. And if you do the radius map and mail that out, it can be a big number. And it was never a problem for the past, I think, 5, 7, 8 years. And suddenly now, when we want to notify people, it's going to come back on the taxpayers. And now we just want to change the law, change the ordinances, and say we don't want to put that on the taxpayers. But if we just stare at the economics, it's a decent argument. This council has presented to you $7.50 versus I don't know, a few. Well, you got the labor in there too, and that's a fine. You can see savings, but there's a reason why we send certified mail. Certified mail is better. It provides a higher level of assurance, it gives a receipt, and it goes above and beyond. And I polled the postal worker down at our local post office, and they said, if you're sending any legal document, such as a zoning change, and you want assurance, nothing is going to go higher for the money than certified mail. Now, I've spoke with our city attorney, and he brought up some good points on we really do go above and beyond in the city of Cape Canaveral. State law does not require us to do this. But I think that's what makes us unique, is that we are doing everything in our power to let a resident know when we're going to do something as substantial as a zoning change. I mean, this isn't, something small. We're going to, a decision to mail them, a zoning change can impact a property's life for the next 20, 30, 40 years. And I don't want to be the council that voted this down. And so I think that the second problem I had was we're arguing the economics on this, and we did not get a strong economic analysis from our staff. It's a lot of words and not enough numbers, in my respectful opinion. If we're going to argue the economics of it, then we need to show numbers. The first thing I want to point out is the information is incorrect. It is not $7.50 to do a certified mail. You can go online right now and see that there's several alternative options from other municipalities that have adopted to send certified mail right here in the state of Florida at a much lower cost. Now, isn't that nice? You get the same quality of assurance for a lower price. But the biggest thing is having a paper trail and a receipt to do that. And so for those reasons, I don't think it's worth it. I think it's cheap. And I think that we as a city need to do our best to communicate. And the worst case scenario is that we mail hundreds or thousands of people and they get to know that their city cares about them. And if we can piggyback on that piece of mail and put in a Friday Fest flyer or whatever we want, we can extract more value out of it at the same rate. But for a zoning change that's substantial, we did not get good economic analysis from our staff. We did not see the numbers from the cities, who they called, what was happened, that was not provided. And I think that we need more alternatives to consider. There is a way to get certified mail or some sort of receipt, electronic signatures. We can cut this cost in half. So I think that there was a posturing of a high number of savings, and it's just not the case. I can show you clearly that we can shave off a substantial amount of that money, and it's well worth the investment. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilman Morrison. My take on this, until, I don't remember how many years ago, but IRS was sending our checks through regular mail. My refund probably wasn't as much as the other council members, but I felt more than confident that I was going to get my check and never had any issues. I think regular mail is going to be suffice. No situation is perfect, but I think we're going to save our constituents some money. And I like for us to go ahead and go with the regular mail and email. I think we're ready for a. Go ahead.
Comment? I think it goes.
If you could make it quick, Councilman Morrison.
Yeah, I think this goes to public comment now before we
Yeah.
make a motion.
Yeah.
I didn't have anything. That was it.
Okay. Okay, we're going to go ahead and open it up for public hearing. Is there anybody, let's see, I'm looking at. I don't see anybody on here for. Sarah Hodge? On this issue? Okay, thank you. Anybody else? Okay, I wasn't asking for a show of hands. I was asking for people that turned their card in to speak. And your name, sir?
I submitted a card on another one, but I neglected to put that on, and I add to a previous card and talk to this.
Okay. Okay, Joe Brew.
Thank you. Joe Abreu, Long Point Road. I am kind of in favor in staying with the certified mail for a few reasons. One, I used it when I paid every alimony check I ever had to pay. And boy, did it come in handy. Let me tell you, it came in handy. I also received one here in the city for a zoning change. From where I live to where they made that change is probably about 600 feet. And they paid it then, so why not keep on paying it? We keep on changing things, and next thing we know, 3 years from now, we're changing it again. I believe you should leave it as is. I just talked to Mr. Dickey tonight, and I'm gonna have to call him because we've got this big zoning thing coming up. I've got a concern with my property. It just keeps on changing. When I bought my property, it was zoned R3. It's now R1. And I've got townhouses across the street from me. I've got townhouses behind me. We are a Mod Podge. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Campbell?
I didn't put that on my request to speak because I didn't feel compelled to until it occurred to me that I might be one of the criminals that the councilwoman was referring to. I have received a number of certified mail. Now, granted, most recently, they've all come from your code enforcement department. They do have value, and they do have value outside of criminals. And Rocky,
It's unfortunate you spend most of your life providing products to criminals. But I would ask you, the post office has certified mail for a reason. It is not a new concept. That reason has not changed. Now, when I spoke at the Planning and Zoning Board about this issue, Mr. Russell asked me if I had an alternative to this. And I don't think we've considered any alternatives other than what Councilman Morrison talked about. I'm not necessarily opposed to changing, certainly not opposed to reducing the cost, but I think it ought to be looked into a little more seriously about an alternative that provides the same level of security as certified mail, maybe at a reduced cost. So I think we ought to look a little deeper rather than just a blanket, we're not going to do it anymore. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to open it back up to the council for discussion. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I forget? Did somebody else want to speak?
Yeah, I have a question. I wasn't aware that I had to fill this out.
Okay.
I just did.
Please state your name.
Martha Minkler. I'm on 425 Harrison in Ridgewood Condo Association. My question is, I do not have mail delivered to me because I'm back and forth from Michigan to here. I had a friend of mine had a situation where this no knowledge of zoning change was done, and she didn't find out till the end of where she was finally going to sign the papers for a sale to purchase. Anyways, how would I or anyone else that's out of the state be notified if we have a zoning change on our property if we don't receive certified mail? That's my question, because I don't want to find out next year that somebody's changed the zoning and I wasn't aware of it because I lived in Michigan, and now I can't sell my place because it's commercial.
Like that.
So other than
David, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe what the city does is it uses the database from the property appraiser tax collector's office, and under that database, there's a forwarding address to property owners, and if out-of-state property owners place their forwarding address, out-of-state forwarding address on their records, then that's the address that would be picked up on the notice. It's the same notice requirements and procedure that the tax collector and the property appraiser use for tax purposes.
Yeah,
So it's up to it's the burden is on the out-of-state property owner to provide an adequate notice to the property appraiser and tax collector for notices, because, as you know, municipalities use that database for all sorts of notices, not just zoning notices, but for code enforcement notices, and that's the most reliable database we have.
Yeah, that's correct, Mayor Pro Tem and members of the council. We do rely on the database that the Brevard County Property Appraiser's Office generates. And just as more of an FYI, that these notices that we're discussing today are always sent to the owners versus individual tenants within a piece of property. Also, the same database is going to be used whether we send it first-class mail or certified. So I think the concern that if we rely on certified, it's going to have, there's going to be more accurate information. Well, that's not correct. We use the same database for.
But her question was that she's not a state property owner in Cape Canaveral,
I have property in Cape Canaveral.
and she's an out-of-state property owner, and she asked how would she receive notice.
Well, I think he answered it, or you answered it.
I think I answered it.
Because you said through the taxes.
We're gonna, your same way you get your ad valorem tax notice.
Correct.
From the property appraisers, you would get the zoning notice that the city sends out in furtherance of this ordinance.
Okay, well, will I get notified that there's a possible subject to zoning change before on the meeting from this?
If the city was rezoning your property, you would get a notice.
A pre-notice, so
Sent to you to the address that's in the property appraiser's database.
okay. All right.
That's where the notice will go. Same notice that you would receive from from the tax collector and property appraiser during the ad valorem tax season, you'd get this notice in the same way.
Okay, that sounds good. I just, like others, there's a few other people, I do think it's one, by signing, it is a good record, paper trail. Thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, back to the council for discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And so those comparisons, I agree, are the same. And the biggest difference is we would get a receipt back, right? And that's the assurance. Because when we say, I think for those of you who've seen the Planning and Zoning Board, there's a log. A log is debatable and disputable and probably not very defendable. And while state law does protect us, it's about disgruntled and upset citizens. That's what I'm trying to prevent, and to give high-quality customer service. And I spoke to one of the council members who passed this, and he said he felt strongly that we should keep it the same, as Mr. Abreu had brought out. The next thing I just want to point out is 100% of the people have been against keeping this the same. We haven't heard anyone today or the last meeting. And is this council going to just continue? I believe in a republic, that we need to do what's right in our hearts, but over this very small amount of money to lower our standard? That's the question. And nearly another 100 people emailed me on this separately, and I know they emailed every single one of you. And I counted those today. Do not keep certified mail the same. I can read them over and over again. Keep certified mail. Keep certified mail. And there were a few that said, no, let's change it. And so I carry that burden today. And the next thing is a comparison has been made on social media and on our Facebook account that this is to compare this to water bills, just like you get your cocoa water bill. There's a big difference between getting your water bill and a zoning change. That's insulting to me. A water bill, guess what happens when you don't pay your water bill? The water gets cut off. That's a pretty good mechanism to call them back, right? Guess what happens when they change your zoning? It impacts the rest of your life for the next 10, 20, 30 years maybe. And that's why we're going to look back and go, how much did we save? $10,000, $15,000? It's not worth it to me. And the final thing, and I just want to put it on the record, and thankfully, I really appreciate our city attorney who works through some of these questions with me. I am not convinced that process has been followed, and I say this respectfully to our city attorney, and he gave me an informal legal opinion on it. Section 110.3 of our Planning and Zoning Board, and I have been told in my early days when I first got elected that we got to run things through P&Z board first. You got to go through P&Z board first. And those were well-grounded thoughts. Things like zoning changes certainly go through P&Z, but this was an ordinance change, and we are the legislative body, and we can change ordinances. But because this fell within Section 10 of our zoning code, and because we're changing how we communicate with property owners, this should go to zoning first, in my opinion, and I back that with Section 110.3 of our Planning and Zoning, where it says that no problem or situation to zoning shall be submitted to the City Council prior to being submitted to and acted upon by the Planning and Zoning Board. Such problems or situations creating a zoning shall include, but not limited to, gives a couple, and here's the one that I believe is tied to what we're doing: review and revision of zoning sections. Now, why did we put in here that nothing shall come to this council prior to Planning and Zoning Board first? And for those of you who don't know, we did what was framed as a expedited method. And an expedited method or an expedited approach, I can't find expedited anywhere in our ordinances. Nowhere does it say that we have the authority to expedite. But I've believed that maybe there's been times in the past where we've used this. if you may.
Can you go ahead and get to, can you wrap it up, please?
And so, not only did we try to rush this and go around, whether our legal opinion believes that we have the authority to do so, I'd rather go off the ordinances of this city than a legal opinion. And the ordinances of this city is explicitly clear that nothing shall come as it relates to planning and zoning before. And Mr. Dickey gave an elaborate abundance of confidence, I think was the statement made in the P&Z board meeting, and calmed the P&Z board down when I brought this to their attention. So I'm disappointed in that, and I think that we need to really respect our process. And the right approach on this, in closing, if you mention, is that we should have changed and or given ourselves the ability to expedite. And then we could have ran this through. But I raised my right hand to protect the ordinances of this city, and this one is explicitly clear to me. So thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you, Councilman Morrison.
I just want to address that. And I, Councilman Morrison, we did talk about this, and maybe you don't agree with my opinion. Okay. All right. My opinion is the Planning and Zoning Board LPA is required to make a recommendation to the City Council. That recommendation must occur before final adoption of an ordinance, a land use ordinance. It is certainly within the rights of the City Council to consider a legislative ordinance first and refer it to the Land Planning Agency, and then the Land Planning Agency makes a recommendation to the City Council before the City Council takes final action. So I use the term expedited, or staff may have used the term expedited in the common meaning of the word, because we're speaking English, and it is an expedited process in that the council's the one that's going to consider the ordinance first, and then the LPA will consider and then make their recommendation. My other point was that a zoning ordinance is a legislative act, which you know, and the council knows, and nothing under the law limits the City Council's legislative authority to give legislative direction first before the Planning and Zoning Board makes a consideration. And the language is just, I thought, just doesn't even address, I don't know what a problem or situation is, but I know this is a legislative act and the council has legislative discretion. And if we logically follow your point, then the City Council should not even be discussing what comes up later in the agenda, such as mobile food trucks, because that is a legislative matter. And if you want to define that as a problem or situation, then the Planning and Zoning Board needs to take it up before the City Council even considers it tonight. So I don't want to see the City Council be put in a position of being handcuffed relative to their legislative authority. There's only one legislative body, and you sit on it with all the other council members. And the legislative body's not the Planning and Zoning Board. So that was the basis of my opinion and our discussion, and I think it's a fairly reasonable position to take. We may disagree, but
Yeah.
which
And
is
Mr.
fine.
Chair, since you addressed me, I'd just like to reply. You did clearly say the word final, but it does not say the word final in our ordinances. And because of that, it says nothing prior. And it doesn't say anything about final anywhere really in this section. And the difference of problem or situation, it's not anchored to problem or situation. It's anchored to the review and revision of the zoning sections. Mm-hmm. And the issues that we have before us, as far as food trucks or whatever, we're just having a discussion on those. And I do believe that is a fair argument to have. And but I don't think that we're talking about an ordinance change. We're not talking about anything. And so because the nature of it not being a revision of the zoning section or a formal ordinance change.
But my food truck example was, it clearly is submitted to the City Council before the LPA has had an opportunity to review it because it's been placed on the agenda. So, I support the interpretation of this consistent with state law to support each one of the council's authority to consider a legislative matter before it gets referred to the Planning and Zoning Board. I think that's, if I was in your position, that's the type of position I would support, because otherwise, how else do you all do business legislatively? If the Planning and Zoning Board, a non-legislative body, has to consider it first. I think it would, that interpretation would handcuff the city council, I think, unreasonably. And that's my interpretation of this.
Thank you.
Thank you, City Attorney, who has a lot of experience in the law. And I'd also like to point out to the general public that we have David Green here, who has over 40 years working for cities around the state. Recently, I went to the Institute for Elected Officials, and all I heard was, David Green, how's David Green? Because he's renowned. He knows city business. He keeps us in touch with what's going on in the state and with other cities. We have to take the knowledge that we get here in the city. And he has great leadership for our staff. Our staff is working hard every day on issues like this. So please, with due respect, thank you.
Question.
All the questions. Well,
I guess my question would be to Councilmember Morrison. The only thing that you have wrong with this is that it's procedurally incorrect.
And the economic analysis is wrong, and there's a lack of surety that we're not getting a receipt. I believe we're dramatically lowering our services.
Well, okay. My thought was, if indeed we would prevail with your thought and go to the planning and zoning first, which I don't feel is necessary, would that satisfy your desire?
they've already passed it. Planning and zoning got it.
I'm sorry, then what are we arguing about?
That's the problem.
Yeah,
the
it's just
ship-
whether or not they should have made a recommendation before the city council considered the ordinance on first reading. That's the issue
Okay.
from Councilman Morrison. He
Well,
felt that they should have
my
considered it
points
first.
don't have any merit at all then, no.
Okay, can we move on?
Yes.
And this is kind of out of order, but Katie Thompson, did you want to speak real quick?
Unless you're going to vote now.
What's that?
Unless you're going ahead to vote now anyway.
He's asking whether you want to make public comment on ordinance 09-2019 before they consider a vote.
Yes, I'll make a couple of comments. My name's Katie Thompson. I live on Magnolia Avenue. First, I respect the efforts to save us taxpayers $37,000 by changing how some things are delivered. I'd like to address the comment that's been repeated a few times by Mr. Morrison that we should be doing everything in our power to get this information to people that could be affected. Well, with my background in cost-benefit analysis and decision-making, you don't take something like that lightly. If you are serious about doing everything in your power, that extends all the way to making personal visits and making phone calls. And just sending a registered or certified mail isn't doing everything in your power. I think there are certainly other ways than sending the mail as you're insisting on, and I just don't want you to use that phrase lightly, to do anything in your power, because that is not. And something more effective could be including a postcard in the standard mail that's going out, a return postcard, that then you have positive confirmation that people have received the information, and then you perhaps could get on the phone and call the remaining people. So there are other solutions than simply the $37,000 one. That's all.
Thank you.
Well, inasmuch as I spoke for it, I certainly will speak for it. And, Mr. Chair, my motion would be to adopt ordinance number 09-2019 on the second public reading and hearing.
And I second it.
Mayor Pro Tem Brown. Mayor Hogue. Councilmember Morrison.
Against.
Councilmember Randalls.
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond.
Or,
Okay, let us move forward to ordinance 10-2019.
Ordinance number, Ordinance number 10-2019, ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending the city code regarding the payment of impact fees, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. This ordinance proposes one relatively straightforward change. That change addresses the timing, the schedule on which impact fees are paid to the city. As you know, impact fees are required by local code to address a variety of services that the city provides, such as sewer service, stormwater, and all that, transportation impact fees. And this ordinance, currently the code requires that the payment of those impact fees be made prior to the time a certificate of occupancy is granted for a development project. And typically COs are issued, certificate of occupancies are issued when a building project has been completed. If this ordinance were to pass, then the timing of the payment of impact fees would be upon the issuance of a building permit, which of course comes, prior to the issuance of certificate of occupancy. So again, this is first reading. Mayor, Deputy Mayor Pro Tem, turn it over to you.
I support it. And the reason why I support this ordinance is because I think that you have to have the proper information and you have to have the money up front, not at the back end, especially if you have to improve the sewer system, such as the lift station, or we have had new piping put in. Prior, we have been just putting Band-Aids on our piping. And then every time there was a break, it was addressed. As I said before, you've heard me say it, rather be proactive rather than reactive. Again, every time the impact fee is a fee paid by the developer, and it's for, every time a toilet flushes, you better make sure when you have 200 or 300 toilets in a building that we can properly handle that as a city. And we've done great improvements. Thank you, Public Works. Our Public Works staff is fantastic. If you ever want a tour out there, take a tour of the sewer and the water system. It really is quite interesting, and they explain it so well that I can even understand it, and I'm not a scientist. But I really praise them for their work and their forethought about this. We need those impact fees up front, not in the back end. Thank you.
Want to go first, Wes? Go for it. Okay, I'll start. I, like Wes, and like to get to the authorities, so I am holding the administrative section 2 of our Code of Ordinances. And it has a section in there, interesting enough, Division 3, and I'm on page CD 2-16. Impact fees. Most of us know what impact fees is, certainly anybody in construction is. And it's just a real quick paragraph, and it's section 2-231. It tells about the purpose of it, and I'll read it to you. In order to defray the cost of new or expanded parks and recreation, library, general government, police and fire and rescue services, and equipment attributable to new construction, impact fees are levied on such construction in accordance with the provision of this division. And it goes on to say about that. And I'll touch a couple other things. The city council, I'm in section 2-233. The city council may from time to time revise the amounts of the impact fees by resolution. And part of the purpose of that is so that when construction, we think it pays for itself, but sometimes it takes a long time to get it back. And it reads here, I'm on page 218, funds collected to each capital expansion account shall be used only for the purpose of expansion and acquisition of the capital facilities or equipment for the particular service named to each account. That means we cannot use the impact fees for future development costs to pay something that we've already done or for regular maintenance. It can only be used for the problems, for whatever is caused by that growth. Expenditures from each account shall be specifically approved by the city council. And it goes on to, incidentally, in 237, I'm reading the same little book, city council shall adopt a capital expansion plan. B, the impact fees imposed hereby shall be reviewed biannually. So we're proper that we're looking at it. At such time as city council shall analyze the projected construction within the city, the cost of any new or expanded capital facilities and equipment of parks, recreation, library, general government, fire and rescue shall be generated by that construction and the funds otherwise available to finance the costs. So we really don't have a problem with what we're talking about in this. The problem that we're changing, if I understand it, is we have always collected the impact fees, and I don't say always because I wasn't here then, but for many years we have collected the impact fees when we issue the CO, that's the certificate of occupancy. That means indeed that when the business is open and starts doing business and has an income, then we say, okay, we're giving you a CO. Now we want the impact fees for the police, the sewer, the water, things like that. What we're proposing is, on this ordinance, is that we would like to advance the impact fees until the beginning of the development. When the builder comes in and says, I want to build, here's what I want to build, and we say, fine, we look over the plans, and we say, okay, the impact fees for the future library, the sewer treatment plant, bing, 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 is going to be there, and we would like them now. That is the change that we're discussing. Not the fact, can we do it or do we do it? What comes to, I guess the beginning on this, we have 2 new hotels being built on West Central Boulevard. West Central is basically off of Astronaut by Zachary's going west. Is basically a sand road with a little bit of asphalt on top of it with palm trees buried underneath it, from my recollection of George Firkins being here many years ago. It will not stand the traffic of all the construction going in and out. We currently have 2 hotels being built there. An independent assisted living facility is just about to be tackled there. That road's going to be mush. Our concern as a city council, and we talked about this, is when either one of those hotels are ready to open in 2 years or a year and a half, the road won't accommodate the people getting to the hotel. So I believe we have talked to the 3 individuals that's involved in that and says, what is the possibility of getting some of that money that we can go out and engineer the road, get bids on it, do construction, and have a new road on West Central when your hotel opens. And that's kind of the thesis of what we're looking on. It's a change. It has some merit. We haven't had this kind of construction that's going to cause that type of capital expenditure, and that's what brought this up. So that's the
Thank you, Rocky.
basis of it. Now you know as much as I know.
Right. Thank you. Councilman Morrison.
So with that, thank you for that explanation. Save me a breath. So what happens, Councilmember Randalls, who loses if the road isn't built for the hotel? Does the hotel have an incentive to get access to their hotel?
Not unless they go through that road.
But does the hotel want their customers to be able to come have access?
I'd hate to open a $15 million hotel and say, but you can't come because the road's tore up. And it's
Right.
going to be that way for a year and a half.
Right. And so, does that hotel have a vested interest to possibly, without a binding law, to ensure that that road is built?
We're talking $750,000 perhaps. It's going to take more than just, I love you tomorrow. This is pretty serious. We need to plan on that, go out for bids, do it in advance.
So what happens, do you think the business or the hotelier is going to be upset with the city if we don't have that road ready?
Well, I think that's a modest assumption, yes.
Okay, Ken, yeah.
And so, yeah, and so the point is there is no need, this is horrible, there is no need to put an across-the-board forced payment on impact fees to a business who's trying to build something new prior to the impact happening. An impact fee happens at CO because that's when the impact happens, right? So why would we receive money or demand that from investors to come into our city up front? And if this specific case was the scenario, I believe that the developer would come and work that out with the city, saying, hey, we've got an expectation here, and the city would have a vested interest to do so, right? And so my point is in across the board, on a case-by-case basis, it might make sense, but across the board blanket, and this wouldn't just be hotels, folks. This is impact fees for homes, all new development in Cape Canaveral. And so that's not to me very friendly. Now let's talk about one other thing, and I feel like I'm being rushed a little bit. With all due respect, this is a big deal. My question is, do we ever? We're talking about receiving payment at permit, opposed to receiving payment once it's de-risked, once the project's built, right?
Sure.
Are there projects that receive permits that never go through, that those projects die on the vine?
Councilmember Morrison, if you would have asked me this several days ago and given me some time to prepare for your questions, I would have been happy to respond to them with accurate information. Now that you're just asking me, I'm not prepared to answer that.
So your response would be speculative rather than transparent and accurate and detailed?
Are you aware of any incident where a permit was issued and it expired, or a project never got built and they may have wanted to renew their permit, or it died on the vine? Are we aware of anything since you've worked here?
I'm not aware of that in the city of Cape Canaveral.
Okay.
Since I've been here, which is almost 10 years. It'll be 9 years, June 1st. If I may help clarify this matter, this issue is not a fee increase. It is only, the city is responsible per its comprehensive plan and state law to provide a concurrency certificate upon approval of a project. And what we're really saying is this is not a fee increase in any way, shape, or form. It's only the timing of when the city receives the impact fee payment. I would submit, to me, and the way I view things, is that the level of service is already being impacted on that road or street when a house is under construction or when a hotel is under construction, because that's when we have increased people, workers go there to work, delivery trucks go there to delivery. So the impact is actually felt, in my opinion, and it's just my opinion, and also based on 40-plus years' experience, is that the impact occurs when the building permit is issued. Whether the council, and perhaps I wasn't clear enough with the budget process, but from a concurrency point of view, the comprehensive plan, the city and the county, I believe, if I'm correct, caused us to add 2 new police officers to keep the appropriate level of service in the budget that the council adopted in October. That is the reason why that included 2 new positions for the Sheriff's Department. The Sheriff's Department worked with me on a timing of it so that one position was filled, I believe, on or about January 1st to gear up advertising time and interviews, et cetera, and to ensure training. And then the second position comes on board July 1st. So remember, the comp plan is a real document that we follow or try to do our best. And at the same time, the impact fee is not being increased. This is another charge that's being imposed upon the developer. I wouldn't sit here and suggest that those past costs don't get passed through, but they get passed through to those that benefit from the development project. The people that choose to stay in the hotel, the people that chose to build a new home and move into it. The rest of the people shouldn't be paying that cost out of their general tax dollars. And the council is exceedingly well aware from me, that every year we get unfunded mandates from the state of Florida that pass additional costs and responsibilities onto the city, and we continue to have to absorb those costs. And so as a city manager, CEO, it's incumbent on me, if I'm going to do my job like I'm supposed to recommend where possible to attach user fees and charges rather than pass those costs on to the general citizenry and or the businesses currently in the community. Part of the process does include a credit for impact fees previously paid. And also, just by the way, please understand that since I've been city manager, we've actually reduced the sewer impact fee substantially because we actually found that in a technical sense, the city was overcharging for the sewer impact fee. And we did ask the city council, you may remember, and Rocky, you among others gave me the look, Mr. City Manager Green, are you crazy?
Well, it was different from the approach we've always done.
So there is a sense of fairness and obligation for being responsible and doing the right thing as best as we humanly can.
Yeah, let me just finish my train of thought here, because he wanted to provide some clarity there, and I appreciate it. This was another one where, again, another 100 folks emailed me, all this council, and said that they were against it, and I'd like the record to show that. And so here we are we saying that if an impact fee comes in, and I know permits do die on the vine, they get pulled. We just had a gentleman want to extend a permit, and we granted it, I believe. And so what happens when the money comes in? Are we going to go build that road and then the project doesn't get built? Is it a who cares, that's the developer's money mentality?
Well, let me respond, please, if I may. Mm-hmm. I believe that the cost estimates for Central Boulevard and Therm are well above $2 million. There are certain people that benefit from that improvement that won't be paying any more money for that, because largely the cost will be borne by developers, to include one or more developers on the other side of the street, meaning the others on the eastern side of A1A, which they technically don't receive all that much benefit for it other than the intersection and related improvements, and the fact that the city has 2 parks and a wastewater treatment plant along the waterfront, Manatee, Banana, and the wastewater treatment facility. So this is just trying to, as best as we can, play Solomon and get it right and establish a sense of fairness and responsibility to the new developers and the new projects that are creating the burden, additional burden, at the same time trying to keep the cost down to those that have already paid their fair share one way or the other. It's as simple as that. And I think that the 100 folks that responded to you, Councilmember Morrison, I looked at the information and I'm not sure it was thorough enough and detailed, and that's why staff saw fit to try to clarify and tell the rest of the story, because it appeared, in my opinion, and I have First Amendment rights as a human being and as a city manager, that it was less than straightforward and clear and transparent, because you did not include the information that is contained in the agenda cover sheet.
Okay, well,
And
you wanted to
that is
clarify
fact.
something? No, no.
Let's go ahead and move forward, and let's go ahead and the public participation. We'll come back and you'll get your discussion. Everybody will get their chance. Okay, let's go. Katie Thompson?
I thought I'd put in my 2 cents as a local property developer. Granted, my property, it's, about a $600,000 investment, and we've only got 3 toilets, although 2 of them are very nice. If I was coming into this town with a $16 million property development project that was going to have 200 toilets, you can bet I would want to know that the city was going to be ready for me on opening day. Otherwise, I would pull that project out. I wouldn't start it in the first place. I'm sure those projects have people in the audience watching to see what happens here. And if they learn that roads aren't even going to be started until the hotel opens, they're going to yank the projects now before they lose any more. So I just wanted to put in my 2 cents as a local business owner who is putting money into the community and hiring local people. And we have really nice toilets. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Sarah Hodge, did you?
I have a comment to make.
You'll
another
get your
comment
chance
to
back after, can you wait till after we close public
Well,
hearing?
I just want to make, okay, yeah, go ahead. Okay, sorry.
Okay, I think that's all with the did you have Campbell? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
Patrick Campbell, 307 Surf Drive. I just have a question. I'm kind of not understanding it. I appreciate what the city manager said. Are we asking somebody to, and it may be a small amount of money, it may be a large amount of money, maybe $2 million to fix a road or repair the road on West Central. So if I came to you to do that and paid the impact fee to get the permit, and then something disastrous happened and I couldn't build, do you just keep the money?
That bridge would get crossed at the appropriate time.
So I think you said yes.
No, I did not say yes, Patrick. Don't you ever put words in my mouth,
It just
sir.
seems odd to me that you can't define it if you've decided you're going to do it.
What I'm about to tell you, if you would listen instead of trying to pile on, would be that would be a city council decision, and the city attorney tonight on several occasions stressed that they have considerable latitude from a legislative decision point of view.
I didn't hear a comment about latitude on this particular subject. I might have missed that.
I'm sorry, that's what he said.
Okay. So the answer to my question is it would be decided at the time.
Yes, and that would be a city council decision.
Okay. And one of the options would be you keep the money. One of the options would be you negotiate some sort of fair answer back to a developer.
That would be what I would think. I would talk to the city council and I would talk to the city attorney and others. But I mean, contrary to what some people in the community think, we're really not ogres and we're really not crooks and thieves. I've been called a lot of names over the years, but they don't really stick.
Well, I'm not sure how we got to there.
I have a
fairly
clear
simple
record,
question.
sir.
Yeah.
Okay,
And as I
let's
do.
move on. Did you
Thank
want to speak, Mr. Bogger, on this? Okay.
Bob Bacher, 118 Sunset. I'm one of the developers. I can speak both sides of this coin, and I don't want to really confuse the issue, but we've been working with the city, and everything that David Green said, I can support. In fact, we've been pushing because I also sat on the CAC, which is the Citizen Advisory Board for Traffic and Roads, and you got to have matching funds, and you got to plan ahead, and at the same time, I'm the developer that's, I sat on the Blue Ribbon panel for impact fees, and I cost my partner about $800,000 because I voted for the impact fees, and I'm a Democrat, and I told him I was more conservative than any Republican because you got to have good roads, good schools, good everything else. And so it's a mixed bag. Like I said, as a developer, what is it going to cost us? On one project, it's about 400,000. So 18 months is gonna cost us 30,000, 5% on the money. It's not hard to figure out. What's more important is our relationship with David Green and the city and the staff and the council and the community. That's more important than the 30,000. At the same time, nobody wants the money. Nobody wants to pay anything nowadays. Nobody likes the pain, I can tell you. And so if you do extra 30,000 every other day, you won't be around long. So we fight everything we can, but at the same time, we're talking to the city staff right now. On the last argument you guys had, I'm on both sides. I'll be the biggest taxpayer in the city soon, if I'm not already. So whether I pay fees here or taxes over here, I'm paying no matter what. So again, I go back to quality, community, and everything else. So we want to be part of this community. I can argue both sides of this coin, and to be honest, I wasn't gonna speak tonight because it's a no-win for us. We aren't voters in this city, but we are invested in it. So we just wanna say we appreciate the city. We appreciate working with the staff. I know I piss the staff off all the time. They don't always agree with me. But we work through it and we try to come up what's best for the city. So that's my 2 cents. I wish you guys luck on how you decide. We want Central to be fixed, and we have offered to put seed money up in front of this. So David's just taking it a step further than what we have offered. Thank you.
Either way, you're not going to stop building the hotel.
No, I'm going to try to beat you to the second reading.
Okay. Let's go back. Is there any, I'm sorry, go ahead.
You have my name, or you know my name. Joe Abreu, Long Point Road. Just to maybe give some, this is the first reading on this, and I understand, just like if I went and got a construction loan from a bank, they don't give me the whole thing at one shot. You get a little bit at a time, draws. Might be able to do the same thing with this, is get half the impact fee up front, the other half at the end. It's a start. It lets you start doing your planning, lets you start preparing. As far as the road, nobody's gonna touch that road until this construction is done. I talked with Josh on our road, Long Point. We both agreed, there's no sense in doing anything on that road right now until the park's done. Though there are 3 spots there that have depressions in them this big. I know, because I've hit them on my bicycle. I'm a biker too, Angela. So, you know, there's a certain time to do the right thing. And sure, a large developer, he just said 30,000, that's a drop in a bucket to people like him. To me, if I wanted to develop my other lot, it might be a little bit more for me. I don't have the same beans they have. Thank you.
Okay. Open it back to the council for discussion.
Yeah, I just,
Anybody else? I'm sorry.
Oh,
I did have a card up there, Danny Rigo.
Yes, he did.
No, I don't have a card for it.
I turned it in.
All I don't have one for him.
You're like Rocky now, you have papers galore.
I pass it on to him.
But go ahead. If you can stand up, introduce yourself, sir.
My name's Danny Ringdahl. I've been developing here in the city since really 2001. And I'm the developer that I expect to be making application to the city for the building permit probably 3 to 4 weeks for the assisted living facility that the city, the staff, and the commission, the mayors, in fact, Mayor Randall started, that have supported me 100%. Otherwise, I wouldn't be standing here today. It's been a very challenging process for me that most of you know. But I think I'm pretty much in step with Bob Bogger, who's doing the hotels across the street from my project that I'll be starting. Difference is I'm Republican. But I will tell you this, in 40-plus years of developing properties here in Florida, primarily Orlando and over here in Brevard County, Canaveral, again, I've put in 172 condominiums so far just in the Porto del Rio project. I have room for another 112. Currently, I've probably put at least $70 million worth of property into this city. My ALF property, that's going to be a lot of money. That's going to be the end item. I will tell you from experience, I have done some big projects. Merritt Towers back in 1984, first building. We spent a lot of money on that project just to find out that the county was not able to take and support me for the sanitary sewer, and I had the C of O. That was a real heartbreaker right there in a lot of ways. I think that at the time I was to a point, I was forced to put an in-house, really portable or temporary treatment center. Never done that one. So for me, once I'm getting ready to do a project, and any of these other large developers out here, we spend 20, 30, 40 million dollars, and I'm going to go on the line for well over 30 million on this ALF. I must tell you, I don't want to have another experience like I did before. So paying the impact fees on something of this size, I budget that into my cost, soft cost, up front. So the impact fees, in this case, as Bob's saying, we're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. But I don't want to take and go online for the kind of monies I'm talking about unless I know that I've got an infrastructure that, number one, is going to be there, but it's first class, and that when I'm ready to take and have the sanitary sewer hooked up, that I got a place where it's going to take and go somewhere other than on my property. So that being said, I don't look to take and spend any more monies up front. I'm a businessman. But in this case, I think it's a prudent thing, and I certainly empathize, and I'm in concert with the city that if they want to take and assess me with those impact fees up front, when I'm ready to take and have my building permit issued, I'm on board with that.
Okay, we appreciate it, Mr. Ringdahl.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, let's go back to the council for discussion.
Okay. Thank you for those comments.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it. I'm in favor of this, as I said before. I think, just to tell the public what we're doing, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take care of some of the inconsistent ordinances, things that really they just don't flow with today. So that's what we've been doing, all right? So not all change is good, but the changes that we've made, I think, are very good. And I think they're a benefit to our community, to our developers. We welcome our developers. We're happy about our community. We're moving forward. And I think that's what we want to continue to do. We want to be constructive, not destructive, not disruptive. And as a governing body, we need to be working together as one unit. Thank you.
Yep, I've got a few comments. We went to public. No incorrect information was sent out for the record, and everyone who received my emails addressing our city manager's opinion, I provided the exact link to the agenda item. And so I'll challenge you to, on a later date, show me exactly where I might have been misleading and let the record show that. The next thing that I want to pull out is if it's such a good idea, and I appreciate the developers speaking their mind and putting a significant amount of money, why do we have to force you to do it? If it's such a good idea and you want that road built and it sounds like an offer was made, why do we need this law? They're willing to come out of pocket. They've made an offer. Why didn't we just take it in the past? And why do we need to bind it on future people? The second thing that points out to me to make this better is to say, to say we'll work that out if you know, do we have any teeth to hold us accountable for these developers? Because I'm trying to put myself in their shoes of, you know, milestones and when we're actually going to do what we say we're going to do. And that I'd like to see language, if we're going to move forward with this, that says that, and a percentage down makes a whole lot more sense to me. And I'd like to waive it on residential developments. I don't think that people trying to build new houses need to go through this. And I'm only saying that because I haven't heard any residential developers say this is a good idea. And I'm unfamiliar with anywhere we don't have, you know, road access like we're dealing with, and it is something as significant as that. But I think that there's a way to make this work where it's not this across the board, across residential and commercial, a percentage of the cost, to where it would come back to city council in the event that those fees were not used in the way the developer hoped it would, and that we would actually vote it, whatever we had within our power to get that money back to the developer. And so those are, I don't think this is very business friendly, and I think that developers have been, they've all taken, these projects are getting built, and they've came out on their own free will to pay money to make sure that it gets done. And so I think that the mechanisms are already there, but, you know, and the residents don't want this, but if this is something that the council wants, in all of your experience, David, do you know of any other cities that are doing this?
Oh, absolutely.
And would you say the majority of them are doing this?
I would indeed.
Okay, in my short little poll in Brevard County, do you happen to know, I mean, roughly, how, I don't know, and I'm just asking. We tend to poll things and use that as evidence. Did we poll this one compared to business friendly? You know, how business friendly we're being, or new development friendly? Anthony, you represent 3 or 4 cities. Do you
we represent more than that, actually, but
are any of the cities that you represent expecting their impact fees at permit?
well, I'm going to agree with one of the comments that was made. Many of my cities we represent, it's at the building permit stage, but I've heard the argument that, you know, maybe it needs to be at the certificate of occupancy stage. Some people that say certificate of occupancy timing is more business friendly or more user friendly rather than at the building permit phase. But, you know, the other cities will take the position, like we've heard some comments tonight, that, you know, dealing with impacts on the types of issues we're talking about, sewer, transportation, parks and recreation, to deal with the impacts, sometimes you have to plan ahead to deal with the impacts, and you have to expend dollars to plan. So when the impacts actually occur, when the building needs to hook up to the sewer, that impact fee is paid, you know, for example, for capacity to address. That's the other side of the argument. So I've heard both sides. It kind of goes like a pendulum. Some cities like CO, some cities like building permit. You know, the issue about when you pay a building permit, you know, the issue to keep in mind is the city's not in a position of having to be forced to collect the impact fee when it's time to issue a CO. And there's a lot of pressure to issue COs when businesses want to get up and running. And sometimes developers who don't budget as well as some of our developers say, well, can I have a payment plan? And because I need to issue that CO, we need that CO, and we have to deal with those issues when you're collecting the impact fee later on in the process after the building has been constructed. So I've seen it,
Okay.
and heard it all over the board in my experience, 26 years experience.
Yep. The two big issues is it's across the board and it's all the money. Maybe engineering cost makes more sense for the commercial new development only, and then a second milestone. So just trying to brainstorm and work with the council to get something a little bit more common sense. It's a bit onerous for me to support.
Okay, can I get a motion?
Ready for a motion?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Prior to the motion, I'd like to read just a quick sentence here, and this is important because this was in our handout. And continuing this example, year one, would include the design and engineering phase of the required improvements, while the actual construction would probably occur in year 2. So I could see that if we make a commitment and start doing the engineering, going out for bid, these kinds of things, as the building gets nearer completed, we'll be in the process of saying, we're ready when you're ready. So with that in mind, Randall's would like to make a motion to approve ordinance number 10-2019 at the first reading and public hearing.
And I second it.
City Clerk, can you call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue, Councilmember Morrison,
Against.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond.
4.
Okay, moving on. Ordinance 11-2019. Attorney, can you read the?
Yep, ordinance number 11-2019, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, regarding code enforcement procedures, providing for a special magistrate code enforcement process, updating the procedures related to the Criminal Nuisance Abatement Board, authorized by Section 893.138 Florida statutes, adopting conforming amendments, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. This ordinance does a few things. First and foremost, the ordinance establishes more specific code enforcement procedures, regardless of whether it's a special magistrate or a code enforcement board that would consider a certain notice of code enforcement violation. So first and foremost, it does clean up and establish more specific procedural provisions of the code enforcement process that are applicable in special magistrate proceedings or code enforcement board proceeding. In addition, the ordinance, as the title indicates, establishes a special magistrate code enforcement process, which is authorized by law. It's just a different method of handling code enforcement cases. And as the council is aware, when the International Property Maintenance Code was recently adopted, the code enforcement process selected for IPMC violations is a special magistrate process. And we're in the process of implementing that special magistrate process, which has already been adopted by council. We're waiting for the city council to consider and possibly take final action on this ordinance so we can handle both the IPMC and just the regular code enforcement process simultaneously relative to appointing a special magistrate. So you'll see some of the same provisions that were stated in the IPMC ordinance regarding special magistrates are likewise set forth under the General Code Enforcement Code, which is being proposed for adoption this evening. We did talk about eons ago the pros and cons of special magistrate and code enforcement process. Of course, it's just a little bit different process because the decision maker would be different. So there are some general pros and cons, but we have talked about those in the past. So at this point, I'd be happy to answer any specific questions you have regarding the proposed ordinance. Mayor Pro Tem.
Okay, I'd like to open it up to the council for discussion.
I'll kick off. I've got a question. Where did any of the council members bring this to light? Has any of the council heard that this is a good idea from the community? Have you heard that this is a good idea from any of the citizens that you engage with?
We got the 100 emails you originated in. Some are for and some are against. I didn't have time to read all 100 of them because some of them address 5 and 6 different ordinances. But yes, we did receive it.
And I can tell you, I read every single one of them, and you'll see that this was the strongest statement that they were adamantly against a special magistrate. And I'll let the rest of the council. Has any of the council heard I personally haven't heard anyone say, give us a special magistrate.
Yeah, the problem though here, Wes, is that it's a little paradoxical. First, you want code enforcement to do a better job. And you stated that. We had a meeting when we talked about our strengths and weaknesses. And you were a proponent of better code enforcement in the city. Now, I think that you may be behind, I don't know who's behind the City Watch. But I read all of my email. I read Facebook every day. I read all of the City of Cape Canaveral sites. And people haven't been happy with code enforcement here in Cape Canaveral. That was one of the major complaints when we talked about weaknesses at our meeting. And you were a proponent for better code enforcement. Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm just waiting on my question to get answered.
Okay, all right.
So
Well,
have you
it
heard of
will get-
anyone?
It will get answered. My point is, some of the issues in code enforcement have dragged on over 30 years, and this has been a major complaint. In order to clean some of the properties up and some of the problems that we've had in this city, it seems to me that we need to do a better job. And we talked about this as one of our weaknesses for code enforcement. Remember? That was back when we all met. And one of the things we came up with was that perhaps a magistrate might be a better idea because you have neighbor pitted against neighbor when you have the code enforcement. That's a difficult thing because it's a quasi-judicial board. I'm not saying I think Mary and the people who have done that for years, I praise them. They've done a wonderful job. And again, I think that the city boards and the city staff and the city council have been extremely fair. However, it's a difficult situation. I don't want to do code enforcement. Definitely not. And I think this way, it's over and done with. It doesn't drag on for 20, 30 years. And the issue is settled. If you have broken windows, you ought to fix your darn broken windows. I don't want to see substandard housing in this city. And I see a lot of it when I'm out on my bike. I see broken windows. I see boarded up windows. I see poor electrical connections. I'm not happy with that. And I know we try. Okay, given 90 days, given 120 days, people pay the fine. But it never seems to be the final answer. I think this way, a magistrate, it's a solution. Nobody likes a judge to declare that, okay, but if you follow the law, you don't have a problem. I've never had to go before code enforcement because I try to follow the law. And I think most citizens in Cape Canaveral follow the law. I think you can all agree with me on that. Now, I also have to say, I'm a little upset by this trying to spoon feed our citizens. We have a very intelligent community here. And we read, we all are aware. I think it's a little patronizing and condescending to try to spoon feed by giving your opinion and then asking people to support you. I think that's wrong. And I think that that's a conflict of interest, and I'm angry about it. And I think that our citizens can do better on their own and make their own opinions and judgments. Thank you.
So I'm just going to go back to the question. Has any citizens told you that they want a special magistrate?
Okay, let's.
It's okay. It sounds like that would.
Let's go ahead and move on to discussion.
You're at the
Rocky.
point of bullying,
Let's go.
and I don't like it.
Angela, let's go ahead and move on. Councilman Randall, let's go. We got a lot to do.
Yep.
Let's go ahead and.
And I don't think I'm in
take it up.
violation
Let's
of
go.
Robert's
Let's
Rules
go.
of Orders.
Nobody said you were. Let's move on.
I know. I understand. And so I'll take that as a no, that no one has told you that. And
We discussed it as a group. We discussed this as a group, remember?
So we did, and we passed it for the IPMC. But for the general code and from the outreach, I think that individuals are not docile, and many of them are going to speak on their own, and there is no spoon feeding. And the character attack that you put on me there is probably.
Come on, can we stay on topic and what we're discussing right now? Let's go ahead.
Replying is probably because maybe there's no facts on your side, but I'm going to get back to.
Hey,
the
let's
original.
stay on topic. Let's move on.
I am, and we can have a healthy debate, and we'll exercise our First Amendment here. And this is how real things can get done. But if no one from the citizens that it sounds like wants this, then why are we doing it? And if like you said, there's a few, a very small minority who want it. The vast majority do not want this. And we saw a lot of time and effort go into it will blow your mind when you see how passionate people were about this topic, the special magistrate, and the long letters from one of our code enforcement boards who's an attorney who put into this. This didn't come from the people. This didn't come from this council. I believe this came as an idea from staff as a proposal to fix, quote unquote, some code enforcement issues that I did agree we need to improve. But I think that we needed to improve the front end. At the time, we had 2.5 code enforcement officers, and now we only have 2. And so I'm for that. If we are thinking that this is going to speed up, okay. I don't think it's going to speed up at the right level, and I think that fairness is going to go out the window. I also don't see anywhere where this special magistrate has to live. You know, there's a benefit of having local people here who understand where that broken window is, and they know that that's a little old lady who just lost their husband, right? Is a magistrate going to understand that? And if we're calling our code enforcement board the problem, that's news to me. That was never discussed in any of the meetings, ever. We never talked about our code enforcement board being the problem, to my knowledge, anywhere. And so when we do our rankings, when we do our evaluations that we're going to do next month, it's on the code enforcement staff. Now there's where the lowest ranking, and they still get a high score, is our code enforcement board. And it is a touchy subject. But to me, to implement a one-person lawyer, essentially, who's going to come in, who does not, by this ordinance, have to live in the city, and who's going to start making banging the gavel faster, making quicker decisions, is not the right direction. I did support the IPMC for a magistrate on building code. I think that that's a good test. But over here on the general code enforcement, let's run a test. Let's see how IPMC goes. Because I can tell you, there's some communities that have a magistrate, and you go on and see that they're upset about it. And let's keep the code enforcement board where it is, because if I understand it, this would dissolve another board, and you know what that means? That's less power to the people.
Okay.
That's exactly what that means, and it's more executive power, and I do not like that at all.
Mayor
Okay.
Pro
I think
Tem,
the whole system
I need to
falls apart
respond.
when we run into that. So-
The record is really clear. My reading of the ordinance does not eliminate the code enforcement board at all. It leaves the option for the city council to decide to have a special magistrate or flip back to the code enforcement board approach. Also, this ordinance establishes the nuisance abatement board, and it would seem to me that logic would dictate that some of the members of the code enforcement board may well, if this is approved, the special magistrate, decide that they would like to serve on the nuisance abatement board as well to continue their involvement in the city. So I don't think it's fair at this point to characterize that we're eliminating a board. I think we're actually moving and establishing the opportunity to move some of the board members that want to continue to be engaged and involved in the community onto the nuisance abatement board that deals with other items of a higher priority from a community perspective. Additionally, the special magistrate is a trained person, an attorney that understands the laws. I don't think it's fair of the city council to suggest that it wants, as a matter of public policy, to pit neighbor against neighbor. But perhaps this council does wish to do that. And I think that's the question. If you do, it doesn't matter to me.
Okay. Only thing I wanted to say is, I don't know where the email list came from or who these, they're citizens of Cape Canaveral. I appreciate you being here. But I'm pretty sure that Councilman Raymond and Councilman Rocky can come up with people, you're saying that you haven't seen one person. I know of people that are not in support of this,
Yeah.
of the Code Enforcement Board. And I'm not saying they're not doing a good job, but I could get a list of people in my community and my rental property, and they would come out and say the same thing, that they would like to see this code enforcement changed and go to a magistrate. So to sit here and say that you don't believe, I don't think you said you don't believe, but you haven't received one person, and that's ludicrous to believe that there aren't other people that agree with the council. I have no further.
Mr. Chair, I would like to interrupt, if I may, just to make a correction, because this little book that we have of some 33 pages, clearly, and I happen to be just open to page 26 of 33, and it says, all we're doing is putting the word special magistrate or code enforcement board, and every place on that I read it through this whole book, we are simply inserting, upon receiving a request for a hearing pursuant to this article, the special magistrate or code enforcement board secretary. So the code enforcement board's still part of this.
The secretary.
This Saturday, what?
The secretary?
Well, I'm reading it right.
Yeah, who's appointed by our city manager. It's not appointed by the council, who the people elected.
The second one is appointed by the city manager. I didn't ask you all to have me do that.
No,
I believe it was your idea.
Yeah, but you get to pick one secretary and we get to pick 5 board members. There's a balance there.
Well,
I would like to be sure
Can-
everyone in the audience understands that everything I do as city manager and the finance director and the staff do is subject to an annual audit by an auditor that is appointed by the city council. So any hint of suggestion that we run roughshod like cowboys and cowgirls, not so much.
Okay, can we open it up to public hearing? Let's see. Sarah Hodge, did you? I'm going to waive my comments right now. Okay. Joe, did you have anything else? Okay. I think that's, anybody else that wanted to speak on this topic? Okay, go ahead, Mr. Campbell.
So I believe if you look at people that have been affected by code enforcement, by code enforcement counsel in the city for the past 20 years, I think I'd rate within the first top 10 of people. I spent 25 years looking at virtually a blighted, abandoned property.
exactly.
I have no heartache with the Code Enforcement Board, none whatsoever. In fact, one of the precepts of our society is, as Thomas Jefferson said, trial by your peers is an anchor. It's an anchor to hold us accountable to our Constitution. Make no mistake about it. The Code Enforcement Board, standing in front of them, you are on trial. There will be a judgment, there will be a penalty, or it will be dismissed. It's quasi-judicial. The letter even says you may want to bring an attorney. And again, I have no problem with the way the Code Enforcement Board operates. In fact, quite the opposite. I think anything that takes away the board and replaces it with a single entity, a trained lawyer, I don't care who it is, but a single entity, waters down our capability to have someone who's been in our shoes decide what should be done. And it may take longer, it may not. I think people want to do the right thing for the most part, and the bad actors should be dealt with harshly and quickly, and I think the Code Enforcement Board has the capability to do that. But if I'm standing in front of the board, I want to stand in front of a group of people that understand where I'm coming from, who have been in my shoes, want to listen to my story. I don't want a single entity making that decision, certainly in the venue of faster. If we're going to go that route, then I would question, why do you all be here? Why don't we trim that down to a single chair? We shall call it a throne, and we shall call the seated person the king. That is not the way we want to go. That is not what this country is built on. I am not in agreement of a special magistrate. The Code Enforcement Board is perfectly capable of doing what needs to be done for this city and doing it in a fair and non-discriminatory manner. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, I'm gonna open it back up to council for discussion.
Well, Mr. Chair, I just need it to be clear that we are adding the word special magistrate, because I'm now on page 4 of this book, and it says about the 5th or 6th sentence down, the special magistrate being added, or code enforcement board shall order the violator to pay a fine in an amount specified in this section for each day the violation continues on and on. And if we are simply putting another method in there, I'm not sure, Mr. Campbell, you put up with a lot more than any of us can even believe for 15 years next to that house. And code enforcement had several opportunities and took it, but we couldn't close the knot or close the loop on it over those 15 years. You had to look for it. So I appreciate your concern. But we are not taking out the code enforcement out of this book. It's there. We're simply adding the word the magistrate or code enforcement.
Yeah, let me be sure that we're all on the same page on that. Once you pass this ordinance, if you do,
yes,
then we would go about the process as policy set by the city council to engage a
that is
special
true. I
magistrate.
understand that, but the code
And the
enforcement,
special magistrate works for this city council, the majority of the city council, I might add, as do I, as does the city attorney. And the situation is simply that if the council then wanted to go back to the code enforcement process, it would take 2 meetings.
okay, that
Or
explanation.
you could expedite that, but I
much
know that's a
shorter than
bad
mine.
word.
But that's how you can change anything with 2 meetings.
Yes, it is.
That was a fancy way of saying the process of how to change the law. I really respect what Mr. Campbell had to say. If
So
you
do
look
I.
at the history of Cape Canaveral over the past 8 years, you will see a dilution of boards. You will, and what that means is less public involvement. And that should concern every single one of us in the room. Because the most efficient form of government is a king. He's exactly right. A king can get it done with, and there is no greater separation of power. One person has it all, and the general body have, a large margin of difference. But that's not what America is. We are made up of layers of boards, and we have great cities in our community, and we have a balance of power. And that is a judicial board, a quasi-judicial board in many respects. And you want reasonable, diverse people to hear you out, not an individual. That's more executive power into one. Look at how often our boards meet compared to where they did 10 years ago. Look at the amount of workshops that we have compared to 10 years ago. I have seen the trend line, and it's not more public involvement. Now, we've improved in many different areas. Don't get me wrong. Community engagement, I'm very proud of what we're doing, and I can go on each department and tell you a compliment. So I'm not up here bashing our city, but I am saying I am very concerned on what's happening with the dilution of the will of the people and their voice. And this ordinance is in the wrong direction, and the people have spoken. They've spoken against it, and there will be consequences by this retaliation. Because what was said tonight, I can send that email back to all of them and say, here's what happened, folks. And we have to go to bed at night and go, did we do the right thing there? What I propose is, I believe, a reasonable one. We passed a special magistrate to enforce the building code. Let's stick with that, and let's test that, and let's run that and see how it goes. But I'm begging this council, please work with me. Let's keep this board alive and well. And you know what this might be to the board for all the problems we have? Maybe it's a time for them to go, you know what? I'm going to be a little better. I'm going to start making decisions so that I can't imagine being on the code enforcement board right now thinking that this council is not happy with them. Ronky, I know you're saying but by adding this magistrate in, it is a dilution, and it's less through them, and to not, why aren't we going to our code enforcement board and expecting, and talking to them and saying, hey, how can we speed up? This is in the wrong direction, and I find it very aggressive, but I've spoken, and you know what I did, Mayor Pro Tem Brown? I've came up here and I've pleaded and I've said, this is what the people told me, and I've been discredited on this dais. I've been no, well, Wes, I can go out and I can get some bias out in the community. My heart is in this community. And I said, you know what, there's only one way that I can show the rest of this council that these people do exist. And they really are passionate. And I'm not spoon feeding anyone, Angela.
Well, it sure sounds like it.
There's people here tonight that if they felt like they spoon-fed, well, that's a pretty insulting comment to say to a public.
But that's what I think you did, is insulting.
Let's go ahead and move on to.
Well, it'd be nice if I could finish. I'm within the bounds of Robert's rule. I haven't exceeded my time.
I understand that, and there's people here that would like to go ahead and move on to other things that have other issues they'd like to see. So go ahead, and if you can make it quick.
I will wrap it up in one sentence. This is the wrong direction, and I plead the council to just table this at minimum. I won't even, let's table it for a couple of months and get more citizen feedback. If you could do that, I'll make a motion right now to table it, and let's sit on it. Let's get this code running, and let's see how it goes, and you go find those people that are for the special magistrate. Bring them to this meeting, and let's have a healthy democratic process and talk it out. This is what Cape Canaveral needs, and people are passionate. This room's packed tonight because these issues they're not excited about. The majority of this room are frustrated about something. And
Okay, can I just, I just want to clarify.
Make it quick.
Just another clarification. All right, I read it both ways, but this ordinance would not, you said would not negate the code enforcement board. We would still keep the code enforcement board and the magistrate would be used in special cases?
You would be deciding if you approve this on 2 readings to have a special magistrate.
All right.
That works
in place of the code enforcement board.
That works, yes, who reports to the city council, not the city manager.
Can I clarify?
Yeah, just a clarification.
Just a clarification. There are alternative ways in which code enforcement can be handled. Currently, the city has only selected the code enforcement board, except for the International Property Maintenance Code, which you all went the special magistrate route. This ordinance, if adopted, keeps the code enforcement board in the code as an alternative. However, it also adds, for the first time generally, the special magistrate as an alternative. Once the city council appoints a special magistrate to handle code enforcement under this ordinance, the current code enforcement board will be abolished, disbanded. However, it stays in the code as an alternative, and that in the event in the future the city council decides that it wants to go back to the code enforcement board, the city council can terminate the special magistrate and then reappoint a code enforcement board without any ordinance change, because the way the ordinance is crafted, it's leaving code enforcement board in as an alternative. Go back to it. Now, on the nuisance abatement board, that's a statutory board that has to be a board. So there's some conforming amendments. The council will have to appoint individuals to serve on that board, but it has a limited role for the criminal nuisance abatement violations that are set forth in the statute. But hopefully that clarifies it a little bit.
But if, once we establish this new, go back to the, I've got to get the letters correct. Once we establish the new system with the IPMC, this IPMC, which is a standard, suggests the magistrate. they recommend that we use a magistrate. Is that correct?
It's an
And we
alternative.
discussed this.
In the IPMC, a special magistrate is mentioned. In the International Property Maintenance Code, remember, is a code that's about that thick, and it has property maintenance standards. It's more than just, building standards. It's property maintenance standards. It includes weeds. It includes, dilapidated buildings. It includes unkempt properties. I mean, a whole variety of things. You all have adopted the new IPMC.
Yes.
And you have directed by that ordinance that any code violations for IPMC ultimately go to a special magistrate, not a code enforcement board. And we haven't gone out for an RFP on special magistrate yet, because we were waiting for the city council to determine what they want to do on this, because it impacts the advertisement that the staff needs to send out regarding the special magistrate position.
So
Thank
would
you.
I be correct to say they've already really decided to have a special magistrate for the property maintenance code, which covers the multitude of issues that we address through code enforcement?
Yeah, we talked about it. And it says that very clearly,
And
that
that
the
was unanimous, I
standard
believe.
wants this is part of it. It's part of the whole package, the implementation of a code enforcement special magistrate system. We already discussed it. We agreed upon this.
Okay.
We agreed upon this.
Okay. Does anybody else, can we go? I ask for a motion?
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to table this for the purposes of IPM, to keep the magistrate. These are different. We have heard that this is going to cost us money to go and buy this individual and invest in them. It's going to, so, we heard saving money up here today, but, and for general code enforcement, I feel like we need to seek more community feedback, and I ask the patience of the council here. We've heard a victim of a code enforcement tonight, and we heard several, and it is, that particular individual is not upset with the board. I'm not upset with the board, and I think that we've heard that this will abolish the code enforcement board. It does give us a little flexibility in opposed to doing an ordinance change, but I do not want to abolish the code enforcement board. I'm saying I'm not going to say no, but I would like to make a motion to table this.
We have a motion by Councilman Morrison to table. Do we have a second? Okay, there is no second. Do I have a motion on Ordinance 11-2019?
Mr. Chair, Randalls will move to approve ordinance 11-2019 at the first reading.
And I second it.
City Clerk, can you call the roll?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue, Councilmember Morrison,
Against.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion.
Councilmember Raymond.
Or
Okay, we are moving on to items for discussion. City Manager, do you? Or,
Oh, Mike, we have,
do you have something, did I miss something?
the items for discussion are presented by Councilmember Morrison,
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
all 4 of them, or 3 of them, I'm sorry, 3.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Brown. The first one, let me just back up and say, these are 3 discussion items, and let me explain what a discussion is. It's a discussion. We are not voting on any changes tonight, and I believe in the legislative process that there's many ways that an ordinance, or a few ways that an ordinance can come about, a change in our code. It can come from certain staff members, and the way that, and it can come from city attorney, city manager, from any of these council members. It can come from the body, the people, through petitions. There's many paths. The path that that I abide by as a council member is when I hear something in the public, people saying, "Hey, what about something?" What I'll do is do some research on it, talk a little bit more, maybe talk to some staff, and I just want to, this is the table. we're just going to talk about something. And on this particular item, number 8, it's lifeguards. And some neighbors, some friends of the community who were lifeguards previously, I've heard both sides. I'm relatively neutral on this topic. I'm not for lifeguards. I'm not against. I had a chance to meet with our fire department. I heard some very well-educated opinions on it. And I tried to put all of my research in a packet and spent quite a bit of time on a Saturday just piling it all. And really where it needs to go next is our talented staff who will take this and run with it. We did some surveys in the community. We've got data. All I wanted to do was to get inertia on lifeguards. We haven't had lifeguards for about 8 years, if my math's correct. We had to deal with the county. We paid a portion of it, and we had a couple here in the middle, I think, Harrison, Tyler area. And in that year, I think 2011, we decided our portion, I think about $18,000. We didn't want to move forward with that. And it's been 8 years. And so we've got some data that says that, there has been some injuries at the beach, but I wanted to talk with our council, a positive conversation. This isn't me versus anyone. Again, I'm neutral on it, and to say I put together some research, hopefully had a chance to, at minimum, give it a skim, take a look at it. Are our beaches unsafe right now? I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying that in the spirit of what our city manager always says, and I respect this about him, is we can always be better. And so what I'm asking for the council is, and what I'd like to do in my recommendation is to direct staff, and I don't even need a hard timeline, I wanted to get it in before the budget, to take a look at the costs of a lifeguard. How much would it cost us roughly? And also that would give this council enough time to talk to your neighbors. I've heard both sides on this one. And to think about it critically and whether that's something we want to do. I wanted to get this in before we get into the budget. I do believe it's a primary role of the government for public safety. And there's no doubt that having more lifeguards on our beaches does make them safer. However, there's certainly liability that I want to be sensitive to. And there's a cost to that. And so the question I want to ask is it worth it? I don't know if it's worth it, but I would appreciate to hear the feedback of this council, certainly the public, which I've heard from many of you today, and our staff I know has probably done all types of research on this. So that is it. Thank you for my time.
I received this information on this agenda on 5/14/19. I would like to get with my constituents, the residents of the city, and do some more discussions with them. So at this time, I don't have a discussion into this matter because of the late, it was given to the council on the 14th. That didn't give me enough time to go ahead and get all my information together about lifeguards. And I would probably like to go ahead and hear the public's take on this, on these subjects. And I would like for a later time to go ahead and discuss these issues, seeing that the 14th doesn't give, I guess, any of the council. You had the material for a while. You just sent it on the agenda on the 14th. So we don't have time to go ahead and go forward with it. I know I don't, but I will at a later date go ahead and bring it up for discussion. I think you sent it in on the 6th. It got put out on the 14th by email. So at this time, with the council's approval, I'd like to go ahead and listen to the public.
Well, under that logic, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, you wouldn't have enough information to vote on anything tonight because we received everything by the 14th.
What I'm saying is the discussion issues that you proposed, we had a pretty, the agendas, I understand what you're saying, is it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So, yeah. I would like to go ahead at this time, unless other council member having a discussion, go ahead and move on to public participation.
This is a problem that I thought had solved several years ago when it come to the cost factor of, at one time we had a lifeguard at Tyler Avenue, And that was because on one side, we've got the timeshares, and on the other side was Canaveral Towers. And there was a need there. We thought there was a need. We paid it, I think it was about $18,000. The problem was there wasn't, I guess, a real reason for the lifeguard to be there. First off, right now, we don't have any idea what your proposal is going to cost. And normally, when you have a lifeguard, you have a restroom, you have adequate parking, things like that. And I don't believe we want to put that on every beach end.
I don't have a proposal. I'm just saying, do we want to, no one has a proposal tonight. Do we want to see a proposal? I'm agreeing with you.
Yeah.
I would like to see a proposal before.
I mean, if the council wishes, we can provide very quickly tonight some very brief, quick information that will perhaps be helpful as to whether or not the council even wants to discuss this into the future. Right now in the city of Cape Canaveral, we have 2 guarded beach areas. One is Sherry Down Park, and it has restroom facilities, shower facilities, parking. Albeit it's got some condition issues, but everybody please understand that is not a city park, that is a Brevard County park. If it were a city park, and we've tried numerous times to make that a city park, but we can't get beyond, we can't even really get to first base. Let me just leave it at that. The other guarded area is in the general area of the port, the northern end of the city, the park there, Jetty Park area is, the beach is guarded. In general, a guarded beach isn't 24/7. It's still a core number of hours annually, and the general cost is about $187,000, I believe, per lifeguard stand, okay? And that doesn't get you 24/7 coverage. The seasonal service, I believe, if I understand and recall correctly from days gone by when I actually had a brain, was that it's about $20,000 in cost for seasonal. That's primarily the swim season. And again, with the guarded tower concept, there's still 12, 14, 16 hours a day that is unguarded. In general terms. So a guarded tower, full year-round, still a large hour of gapped time unguarded is $187,000. We've got that price from the county. I'm not confident that the Canaveral Fire Rescue feels able to provide any additional guarded service under its contract or for additional fees from the city. So I think the sense of feeling from conversations I've had since this came up is that the county would be the preferred provider. We have engaged in general discussion with the county, and it's at 187. And again, the same thing with seasonal. I think everyone needs to understand, yes, lifeguards provide a valuable services. The issue is that I think it's safe to say, and this just isn't David Green talking out of both sides of his mouth, that our beaches are relatively safe. For those that prefer guarded service, they can go to Sherry Down Park, or they can go to the other guarded facility. And we have the issue in Cape Canaveral that our predecessors didn't, in my opinion, do a very good job acquiring public land along the Atlantic Ocean to have public parks. And so all we have is, and I don't remember the number, it's either 60-foot wide or 80-foot wide beach end. And we try to put a number of people across the crossover, park in those areas, meet ADA requirements in all respects. And that's why we've gone to the Moby mats as an example to try to help with that. That's why we have an ongoing program to improve the crossovers so they're more usable by the entire public, not just the more mobile ones. And so in a rule of thumb, if we were to go into that very heavily, it gets very, very expensive very quickly, and perhaps the safer bet for the city from a liability point of view is just from signage at the various crossovers directing people that wish to have the higher level of service, the lifeguard level of service, direct them to Sheridan Park and to Jetty Park. And that way, the city has no additional expenditure other than the cost of signage. And Wes, I would have told you that had you talked to me about this.
Okay.
I get a lot of comments on things have to run through staff. That's not how the legislative process has to work, okay? This is a table, and this council has the right to talk about things. And if the staff is going to just go off on a deep dive and start working, I don't want to bring things to staff without this council's approval. And so there's many times that staff might go working on something, and you have the right to, without council's approval, but I'm going to feel very, hey, there's a lot of 4-to-1 votes up here, right? The stuff bringing Councilmember Morrison, I try to respect this council and this body to know that if I can't get 2 other people to agree with me, and we shouldn't be directing staff. So that's been my approach. And I want to be respectful to that process. And just because the survey, didn't have an overwhelming response, I think that we put out, there was a social post about that. Look, there's no direct questions about lifeguards in the survey. It didn't address it. And then also things, we talk to people constantly, and I know our staff does too. But as a council member, get paid $200 a month. That's what we make. And all I did here was put together a very nice report, and I said, start it. And it came in on the 7th, and by the deadline, and it was posted on the 14th, with everything else came out on the 14th. And all it is just inertia. It just the work has been started. So today, if I had to lean in a direction, I'd say we need to look at the numbers a little closer. And I think that there's a net gain to a lifeguard, and there's a way to do it. So that's it. I've said enough. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any further comments? I'd like to go ahead and move on to anybody from the public would like to address.
I think you have a speaker, Mr. Chair. Is that for this item?
Yes. Okay. Did you fill out a? Well, go ahead and announce your name and fill one out after you finish.
There's another person there.
Okay.
Hello, my name is Rhonda Breininger, and I live at 426 Jefferson Avenue. And I have, in 2014, I started some of the nicest, newest vacation homes in this area. And the landscape has changed since 2014, considerably. In 2014, I would say most of the homes around here, most of the people were retired. Most of the people didn't have, I looked at the income, and they were all very low. And yes, there's a lot of people, going back to the code enforcement issue, it would be nice if we could have a slush fund for those people that do need assistance to break for those broken windows and things. That probably would help. But the lifeguards, you have done a great job on opening up those beaches. I have not seen beaches like that, since I've been to Destin. The enhancement of those beaches is just amazing. I get travelers, I probably get, 500 people a year here, probably more, that come just to see Cape Canaveral, not to see Cocoa Beach, just to see Cape Canaveral and their family. These are multi-generational people. They have kids as young as, babies, and then they have the elderly, generation, and then everything in between. And the first thing they ask, a lot of times the first thing they ask me when they're trying to book at my place is, are the beaches safe? Do they have lifeguards? And then I have to direct them to, if I have to direct them to places outside of, I have a beach right at the end of Jefferson, right at the end of Harrison. There are beautiful beaches there. And it's always a shame, because I thought, you know what, this this place is changing, and I have to keep my people that visit safe. And lifeguards, if you can find a way, I mean, I know that the YMCA has lifeguard training, and if there's some way of partnering with them and bringing them on to every single beach, putting a small bathroom at the end, right where those trash cans are at the end of the road. Simple things like that to lower the costs and only put them in during, put a sign up that you're only going to have them during the summertime, seasonal times, when the weather's warm, and during certain periods of the day. It just is an extra benefit to not only the visitors that are coming here, but also it really is a safety feature to the people who live here. I have 2 small children. I've been here for 5 years. They were when I came here, they were probably 6 years old. And it's terrifying to go to the beach with 2 6-year-olds. It's terrifying to go here, and I always think about it every time. I'm sitting there panicking, right there, wondering,
Okay, if you could.
Yeah, but I'm just
slow
saying.
down. Okay.
I'm just saying I panic when I see them there, and it's because I know they're not safe. No beach is safe, period. But lifeguards at least will provide that added safety that if a wave hits them and drags them out, they're there.
Okay.
And Cape Canaveral's, it's time.
Thank you.
You're growing.
Thank you. Patricia Dugan.
This is more general than just the lifeguard thing, because tonight, all I've listened to y'all, the cost and the expenditure you're trying to save, and on the other hand, what you've done is you've said, hey, we're gonna add something else that's gonna cost us more money. So I think you've done us all a disservice tonight on these votes, because if you're gonna save money on postage, but then you're gonna turn around and add a special magistrate to the board, or, to, like they said, a quasi-supreme being, that to me is ridiculous compared to saving money. The second thing is the cost. Everything you add costs. You're telling us what to do, how to do it, and it's costing us money. Mm-hmm. This is not fair to the people you represent here. And I'm talking about the individual property owners, not the corporations, because they're not individual people. The second thing that really concerns me is we have an environment here that is beautiful, and there is no concern for that natural habitat, because Long Point is a really good example, and the Indian River Lagoon. We've destroyed the lagoon. I know we're working on fixing it.
Okay,
many things.
We were
to
talking
keep
about the
that.
beaches and lifeguards, ma'am, and it's
Again,
getting.
it's money, 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 money. You're gonna put people down in here into a natural habitat that is going to cost money for policing it and for putting in bathrooms and maintaining it. And you've disturbed the natural habitat. The birds are going away because of the dying of the river, and then putting people into their habitat where you're gonna trash it. That's all I have to say. I think it needs
Okay.
more agenda and more, representative of individuals and the habitat.
Okay, thank you. Is there anybody else? Okay, Councilman Morrison, I guess we're going to move on to food trucks.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion on the recommendation. I don't know if we'd take a formal vote on this, but maybe a consensus vote to direct staff. It sounds like you didn't have enough time to review this, Mayor Pro Tem Brown, so I don't know how you'd really vote against it. But my recommendation would be into this is that staff does a quick deep dive, whatever the council would approve on it, not asking for anything fancy. And then we come back when it makes sense. I'd like it around budget time, and to just to see that number as a trade-off in there. And that would also give this council enough time to work, as you brought up, which I like, to talk with the public and to get some new vantage points. Because we can't just talk about the cost of the lifeguards without talking about how much a life is worth when somebody's life gets changed. And people have died on this beach since we got rid of that lifeguard in that exact area by my house, right on Harrison Avenue. And
What from, though? What from? Was it suicide?
Rip current. I don't know the exact details, but as I remember, it was something to do with, it was a drowning.
And what month was it?
I don't have the date.
Oh,
This would be very good to look up, and this is the type of data that wouldn't it be nice to know? If we find that 5 people's died, 2 people, I don't know, one's too many in my opinion, over the past 8 years.
Are we
Was
on
was it
9
worth
or
it?
8?
Let's,
We're still on
Come on.
8, and so I'd like to
We're
make
still
a
talking about lifeguards, right?
yeah.
Yep,
If
we're
we can
talking
move
about
on, let's go.
life. Yes, we're
Okay.
talking about life.
Lifeguards.
And so, if I'd like to make a motion or a vote to direct staff to do some more research and also give council enough time to circle back before the budget comes to an end. I guess if we can get a couple of support for that.
I'll agree to that.
Thank you.
Okay, can we move on to food trucks?
I think David is always very clear on he needs to know what's expected. And so, do we have enough support from the council, Rocky, Angela,
I didn't hear the motion.
to direct staff to do some research?
No, not unless we want to talk about it. I don't want to put staff through a whole bunch of time and money. I read that book. That's a half a ream of paper I read over the past week. And I just can't support, and we're talking millions of dollars for lifeguards and restrooms.
Okay.
Yeah, I have
Miss-
I can't support it either. I'll tell you why. Just let me say what I want to say. I go to the beach frequently. And what I've noticed, and I had an accident at the beach several years ago. I was hit with a surfboard right in the face. And I was just up to perhaps my thighs and right smack. And I could have been killed. What happened, I just want to point it out. Everybody came rushing to help because blood was pouring out of my face and mouth. And people help one another here. That's what the community of Cape Canaveral is about. People help. We have cell phones today. I'll give you another example of how we help each other. If I ever see a child out, I'll say to the lady back here, my husband and I will run. We will run and pull the child out if the mother or father is not watching their child. I bring my grandkids. I've brought my grandkids since they were toddlers. And we really,
Okay,
well,
let's-
just let me just
come on.
finish. Let me
Let's-
finish.
can
You
we-
spoke. Give me a
Angela, can
minute.
we go ahead
Give
and
me a
close it
minute.
up?
Okay, the other thing is I had another friend who fell on the beach and broke her hip. And she got immediate attention. She was taken to the hospital to do the hip surgery. But what I'm saying is people address it immediately.
Right.
That's the beauty of Cape Canaveral. Thank you.
Okay. So what was you,
It sounds like we didn't get.
I don't
okay.
support, I don't support
So it'd be
anymore.
2 to
We-
2, so the motion, the
I get
discussion
sick of
issue
discussing.
dies.
Yep,
Okay,
exactly.
go to the next one.
Yep.
Food trucks.
Thank you. Food trucks. So another issue that's been brought to my attention, I think it's been brought to the city staff's attention. It came through the P&Z board. And when I talk about food trucks, I'm not talking about street parking. I'm talking about parking on private property. This went to the P&Z board December 13th, my birthday. I won't forget it. 2017, about 18 months ago. And the sentiment that the board, it was a kind of an informal vote like we just took, was from listening to the recording that it didn't move forward, and I'm not going to quote all of them. The majority of them had their reasons for not supporting it, which I think I outlined in the summary. But what I wanted to do today was to have a discussion about food trucks, and the way to allow a food truck in the city of Cape Canaveral can be very costly, in my opinion. And I've heard some very concerning stories about food trucks that set up in Cape Canaveral and been ran out, if you will, by our code enforcement board. I think a private employer here had a food truck at their establishment, and I looked at that as kind of like a catering service. They were on private property.
And they were not run out, by the way. CHS.
I don't.
We've talked to CHS regularly, and that's permissible because it's like a catered service. And so in that situation, it doesn't serve the public. It just serves the employees and/or guests and visitors, I assume, of CHS when they have a special event.
If I could add to that, when I talked to CHS about this, they said they have significant security concerns about even allowing the public on their private property It was not allowed for any public member to attend that.
And so when the statement is made that we do not allow food trucks in the city of Cape Canaveral, that's not quite accurate because we have a food truck event through our leisure services special event program. And to be candid, the attendance there or participation by the public seems to be very weak. And I think it would be safe for me to say, it seems to be staff's concern that sooner or later the food truck group will not want to come here anymore because it's not really profitable. And so anyone that approaches the city, and this is a general statement, from the point of view of a special event for their business, I don't think we have ever denied that.
And how much does it cost to do a special event?
No, they do not. The CHS is not charged for a special event at all.
Has a truck ever came to CHS and been told to leave?
To my knowledge, no.
David? Anyone?
Yeah,
And I'm gonna say,
again,
has anyone been, are you going to plead? you're not
again,
gonna-
I would have preferred to have you ask me these questions prior so I could give you a good educated response. So I'm
I
not
did.
prepared to answer that question. I don't know.
Okay. I did give you a question on CHS by email. And if I ever, did you happen to get back to that one?
From a transparency point of view, it was our decision. I made the decision that we should be transparent, as you so often request, and we would discuss this in public. And the answer to the question is that, to our knowledge, there is no issue involving CHS.
So David just requested me to ask him a question prior to the meeting. I just want the record to show I asked the question prior to the meeting. He was instructed by our city manager.
You didn't ask me that question, Wes.
I asked you a question about was there an incident at CHS?
You asked to meet, and you tell us when we ask you to meet that you're too busy to meet.
Okay, and so let's get back to the discussion item. I was interrupted by the city manager who wanted to clarify, and the point is this. Let's just close our minds off to what just happened and think about it. A private property owner in the commercial zone in Cape Canaveral right now cannot allow a food truck to come onto their property and to serve food to the public without paying significant costs. That is the discussion today.
No, it's not it's not permitted by the city code at all.
Right, and so because you can't find food trucks or food vendors in our city code, it's just not allowed. So we have an opportunity as a council to give the residents, in my opinion, and this is something that I am advocating for, options on more places to eat, a diversity to eat. Food trucks pay state licenses. Food trucks are subject to health inspections. Food trucks pay taxes. And if a restaurant pays more taxes, there's a reason why. They got more real estate. You know how to shut down a food truck? Have a lightning storm. They take a significant amount of risk every single day, and it is the ultimate small business of America. It's a kitchen on wheels. They don't have a air conditioning home. They work very hard, and they might employ 1, 3, maybe a little bit more employees. And you know what every food truck owner is trying to do? They're trying to make a living, paycheck to paycheck. And typically the customers, you can go to thriving cities across America. Austin, Texas, Los Angeles, Boston, Chicago, wherever, and you'll see these vibrant food truck communities. The comment made by our city manager about, I don't know, they're not showing up, that's not for the government to decide. The market will decide whether or not a food truck can stay in business or not. That's not our job. And today...
Can we...
No, sir, I need to finish.
Well, you need to hurry up.
No, I don't think I do.
Yeah, well, if you don't, I'm going to go ahead and do the gavel so we can go ahead and get public participation.
Okay.
I mean, you're repeating yourself time and time again. Let's move on.
I'm presenting the discussion item so it gets a fair response, so we have clarity here. To not allow food trucks is to me, it's a justice issue. And that we have the Constitution that gives people the right to open up a business, and just because another restaurant or another business pays more does not mean that they have any more rights. You get the same amount of rights in this country as anyone else. Whether you are Bob Bugger, who's quote-unquote the highest taxpayer, he's the #1 taxpayer, or might be someone up there next to him, and he gets just as much rights as the lowest income person in this community. And a food truck should be treated the same way. That's what makes our country special. Not to mention the economic development that this will bring. It's a barrier to entry. It's costly. Now we can welcome food trucks. And there's ways to do it the right way. They need to have containers to put their litter. They've got a vested interest. My experience on food trucks has been very favorable. My experience at restaurants has been very favorable. But I'm with my daughter on a rainy day or a hot day, I'm going to take her into a restaurant. But if I'm in a hurry, I might pop into the food truck. And I don't want to discriminate against one business over another business just because they have wheels or just because they have a lower operating cost. The market will decide. And if it's in a restaurant has a whole lot more to offer than a food truck.
Can we move on?
So that's why I wanted to talk about that today and why I support it.
Can we move on to public participation?
yes.
Okay.
I just want to know where
Number-
these food trucks would go.
Mr.
It's not up to us to decide where they'll
Jeff
go.
Mr. Chair.
Sarmons, will you please step forward and
I'm so glad we have the freedom to express, because I've definitely got some expressions. First of all, when you mentioned foul weather will shut down the food trucks are going to shut down restaurants, okay? Well, let me go to where I'm going with this. Number one, Southern Charm Cafe, we have 27 employees that rely on customers to come in our restaurant on a daily basis, okay? We do things for this community. We put money into this community. We put jobs in this community. A food truck comes in from outside source into our community, makes their money, okay, and they take their money and they leave our county or leave our city. How are we benefiting from that? Whose jobs are they taking? My people. McDonald's, okay, just to give you an idea, McDonald's currently has 52 employees. How many food trucks would it take to really take some of those jobs from McDonald's, okay? And Zachary's, they've got 12 employees. These people are relying on a daily basis for us to open up these doors for our community. Understand this, please, folks. Okay, this is our community, all right? We're not coming from outside. We are here permanently. We put our hearts and souls into our restaurants, into our public, our people, our schools. You know, thank God I had the opportunity to do a fundraiser for Cape View Elementary School. How many food trucks are going to do that for our community? 0, folks, 0. Okay, I'm sorry, but you know, this really, it gets me. It really does. It breaks my heart that the council would even bring this forward. We brought this forward in 2017, you are right, okay? And at that point in time, I'm not opposed to food trucks for special events. What I am opposed to is them coming from outside Brevard County for those special events also. Because at least you're offering the people in Brevard County that have food trucks the opportunity to participate in Thunder and different events that we have going on here, the art festival, et cetera, okay? To me, that makes sense, okay? But for them to park a vehicle in front of Zachary's and say, hey, we're here, and if business isn't good, guess what they get to do? They get to start up their vehicle and go down the road and reopen again. We don't have that opportunity as business owners. I am totally 100% against this at this point in time.
Mayor, may I make just one comment? I think that's appropriate here.
Thank you.
Okay. Did you sign it?
Let me just make a point. Gustavo, we have a Friday Fest subject to weather 12 times a year. Is that correct? Yes. And we also have food truck events. Yes. Now, what does it cost a food truck to appear at Friday Fest?
Around $50.
$50.
Yeah.
And that gets them 4 hours or 5 of an audience that the city pulls together, and the city provides the entertainment and the stage and all of those kinds of things to foster the attraction of Friday Fest.
Yes, sir.
To bring people together in the community. So when we look at it from the point of view, then is the answer to the question that yes, we do allow food trucks for catering, and we do allow food trucks to register for Friday Fest
Yeah.
and pay $50
Yeah.
for the privilege.
Yeah.
And, okay, so they are allowed here, aren't they?
Under certain, and now, can I expand?
And I don't think you
Yes,
find
sir.
that objectionable, do you, Jeff?
Not for special events, no, sir. Not only that, the city charges me a seat tax for every seat I have in my restaurant.
Yes, we do.
Okay, so therefore, you're taking away opportunities for me to put a butt in the seat to be able to feed our local people right here, okay? By that food truck that doesn't have seats, it doesn't pay that tax that we pay as business owners. Please understand that. Not only that, the garbage that they have, guess who takes care of that garbage? The city. Okay, so it's the taxpayers who's paying for that garbage on a $50 fee that they apply for that permit. It's not, do the math, folks, we're talking about saving money. How is this saving us money? You're taking jobs from us and you're also costing.
We appreciate it, Jeff.
Sorry.
I think there's one other person. Did you fill out a card? Okay, go ahead and announce your name and fill out a card and give it to the city clerk when you finish.
I'd like to fill out a card too.
My name is Louis Hines, and I'm a food truck owner, and I live here in Cape Canaveral. And so for him saying to my taking away customers, you don't have a customer until they come into your restaurant and eat your food.
That's a true statement.
Oh, I know it is. So you can't say that I'm taking customers away from you. I live here. I pay taxes. I don't have kids going. I pay for roads. So you can't tell me that I don't pay taxes here. I have a right to make a living for me and my family. Just because I'm smart enough to use a food truck and don't want to open up a business, that's your problem. But I provide good food to these people. Most of you people I see in here has eaten from my food truck. That be good barbecue. I can ride right down the street right now at 12 o'clock in the middle of the day, and not a person sitting in this place who's supposed to be selling barbecue. I can't help because their food not good, but I'm good at what I do. And I have a right as a citizen of Cape Canaveral to earn a living for my family. And for you to sit here and deny me not to sit here and make money, you're doing a disjustice to me and to this community. When I was at the farmers market we used to have, I fed so many people in this community. You talking about helping people out? I help a lot of people. I bring food by these gentlemen right here. So what are you talking about?
I feed this gentleman too.
So do I too. I don't charge them though. But I don't charge them though. So I have a right to earn a living here in this city too. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody?
Here you go. Hi, my name is Katrina Freeman, and I live at 504 Fillmore, and I'm the HOA president for our condominium complex. And I want to tell you the reason why the food truck event is not well attended by the community, and what I've heard from living here the past 10 years is, and people go to it and they turn around and leave because the selection is so poor. There's only 3 or 4 food trucks, and probably 2 out of the 4 are desserts, snow cones and ice cream and pies and that type of thing. So they said the selection is really poor. There's not very much of a choice. But you know, when we have food trucks, we have much more of a choice. I go to Southern Charm frequently, and it doesn't stop me. Having a food truck doesn't stop me from going to Southern Charm. I love their breakfast. I love their pies. I love their prime rib. I go there, like I said, frequently, my boys and I. But the food trucks gives us another option. And if you are in the city here on Saturdays, Sundays, the traffic here is unbelievable. The amount of people that come over here on the holidays and on the weekends from Orlando and other places in Central Florida, there is enough customers to go around. It's not going to affect Southern Charm's business to have food trucks because there are so many people coming into town. On the street that we live on, just last week, oh my gosh, people were parked all over in the grass. They were parked all up and down the streets in places where they shouldn't have been parked. There were so many people. And it's like that for the rocket launches. It's like that for so many. This place is getting so crazy busy. Just look at the traffic. There's enough business to go around, and the food trucks just provide another option. And especially the really good food trucks, they stay in business. And I know for a fact, Lewis has been in business for years, and he's got a huge following, and he's having to go to Cocoa Beach because there they allow food trucks on private property. And here he's been at Straw Hat Lounge and has had to leave. He's been, at various places around here, but has had to leave. And Cocoa Beach has gladly opened their arms to him and other food trucks. And there's more food trucks at the Cocoa Beach Festival than there is at the Cape Canaveral Festival. And because the food truck people at Cocoa Beach are telling me, because they were getting, $100, they were asked for a $100 fee, not a $50 fee for their food trucks. And also, if it rained, if there was bad weather and it got called off at the last minute, in Cape Canaveral, they were not given their money back. So they were, their money was kept. And so they didn't think that was quite fair. So that's why they're in Cocoa Beach and not in Cape Canaveral. That's what they shared with me. So, like I said, I think there's enough business for food trucks.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem, if I could add a little bit to this.
Go ahead.
I think it'll help be a little less passionate, and it's just more factual here. I did a quick survey myself of some of our, I want to call them mom and pop restaurants just recently since this came up. So this is a very balanced viewpoint. And I'm just going to read off. I've got 11 results here. Barcata Bowl, he actually said he's okay with it as long as there's a separation requirement from like establishments. Otherwise, it's unfair competition. I spoke to Jocelyn at DiLorenzo's Pizza. She says, no, we're off the beaten path and have enough of a hard time as it is. We have enough competition between us and Cocoa Beach. Why would I want there to be more competition? Goodfellas, Mike said, no, I do not support it. I don't think additional competition is going to help with the problems restaurants face. I spoke to Thomas at Kelsey's Pizza. He said, when you build your own restaurant or sign a lease for a long time, you're taking a lot of risk and investing a lot of money. It's a really tough business. When you set up a food truck, it's not a big investment and you're not taking much risk at all. I totally think food trucks should not have that right in this city. And then Zarella's, I spoke to Dennis there. He had a completely different opinion. He said, sure, why not? There's enough room for everybody to come out and make an honest buck. I spoke to Sarah at Sage Bistro. She said, I don't necessarily want the additional competition. However, I feel the competition will be greater for restaurants that are not fine dining establishments. You've heard from Jeff Sermons tonight, and I spoke to him. I spoke to Dina at Zachary's restaurant. She said, we don't need any more competition. And finally, I spoke to Alberto at Vargas Cafe. He said, I would not want the competition. They don't have as much investment in the city as I do.
Thank you very much for doing that. That's very helpful.
Okay, let me go ahead and, we've got Ed. Would you like to go ahead and speak? And
Thank you. My name is Edward Lee. I live at 6855 Poinsettia Avenue in Cape Canaveral. I wasn't going to speak tonight, but I've eaten at That Be Good Barbecue, and I haven't been to Southern Charm yet, but I've lived here for 7 years, and I'm just now getting around to some of the brick and mortar restaurants that have been around here for a while. I work in the insurance industry, and I've actually had the opportunity to write insurance for these restaurants that are opening up, and it's not easy with the brick and mortar restaurants that are opening up for them to actually start up, to get in there, build their restaurant, get their staff members in. So I can understand where he's coming from with the competition with the food trucks. However, with the families, have the food truck owners, wanting to support, needing to support their families, and that's, them, that's their way of, living and, providing for their families. It's bringing in another source of, a place for us to be able to eat. I don't know. He does make some really good food. I've been to some of the festivals that Cape Canaveral has hosted, the events. I've been to the ones in Cocoa Beach. I really haven't been, I've been to a couple of them. The food trucks, I didn't think they were that great, honestly. That Be Good has probably been the best food truck that I've been to around here, other than Taco City. So that's been one of the reasons why I don't go to the food truck events, to be quite honest. If there were other food trucks that came around, I would definitely I'd like to see that more often. I wouldn't want to see them set up shop in front of a restaurant though. That would definitely be sad. But yeah, that's all I got.
Okay, we'll go back to, I think, Louis, I've already given you 3 minutes. So we're going to go ahead and move on with the discussion from.
Yeah, so, go ahead, Angela,
Well,
sorry.
I just want to say, I've never had an opportunity to discuss or to ever vote on food trucks. So this is just an open discussion tonight about food trucks. My question is, where would the food trucks be? I mean, that was one of my biggest questions. I didn't know if the food trucks had to be in a designated area. I understand that we have an ordinance that says no parking on city streets, so that was my question. Where would they go? I mean, I'm just wondering. I mean, I don't have a problem with any food truck being at an event. I think that's a good idea, or a particular park, perhaps. I don't know. I don't know. I'm open. I mean, this is why we're having this discussion.
Can I share my opinion? And it's a very good question. They wouldn't park in the streets because they're not allowed to park in the streets, just like we are. And it's a very good point. And they would have to take into consideration where the best property would be. I would assume they'd want to be close to A1A or on Atlantic, somewhere in the commercial. And they're going to determine where they can find a property owner that's going to willingly let them use their property. Do you think Zachary's property owner is going to let another restaurant on their business? Probably not. And so where would they go? Great question. That's not really, I think, our job to figure out. They'll have to figure that out. If I was a food truck, I would probably approach several commercial lots and try to get the best deal I could possibly find for the highest exposure. So that's it. And they would have to factor in, do I have enough parking? But these are all great questions that I think Anthony has some experience with in another city, writing some code. I have some model legislation as well that I would like to submit if this council would like to consider things like where would they go, where the parking. Those are healthy questions, no pun intended, that we should be asking. And so I think, it's something that we should explore. But to just say no, I have a very hard time with that. To compare what we allow here in the city, Friday Fest is 1 day a week. Lewis can't make a living on 1 day a week. Or 1 day a month, excuse me, thank you. And so it's about giving people opportunity. I get very apprehensive when I hear things like it can only be so many square feet from a restaurant. I added a lawsuit, a constitutional lawsuit in our packet that just came in when they, in my opinion, foolishly put that, what I would call a protectionist view in, policy in place down in Fort Pierce a couple months ago, and the judge ruled it is unconstitutional. It's a taco stand in another shop. And you can see case after case after case, and we have to be very careful as a council on how we would regulate this. To me, you treat them like restaurants. Restaurants have a significant comparative advantage. You want to know the proof? A lot of food truck owners want to be restaurant owners one day. A lot. And why do they want to be restaurant owners one day? Because a restaurant has a lot more to offer the community. And so some things that I just want to rebuttal, and I absolutely love Jeff Searmans and his family and the restaurant, and I have talked to him at length about it. I've talked to Zarella's, I've talked to a few of them. Todd took it, and I'm going to continue to go to Southern Charm and Zarella's and support as many of our local restaurants as I possibly can. And there's a reason why. They put a very good product and service out. But a couple of things. It's not a zero-sum game. It doesn't mean that one person loses at the other person's expense, Jeff. I beg you to think about this. This is a situation when a family's going to move here, one of the questions they ask is, how many restaurants do you have to eat? How many options do I have? And a real estate agent loves that because they can say, look at all the different options we have. And so what will actually happen, and it is a myth, Jeff, and I believe it is, that your business is going to go out. It's actually, in the packet that I provide, the opposite. The studies show, the data shows that Southern Charm is actually going to increase in business. Zachary's is going to increase. And Zarella's, I think, had the right attitude. The more, the merrier. We're actually all going to complement each other. You can't have too many restaurants in a community, in my opinion. I think the market will kind of settle itself out.
Can you expedite it, Councilman?
We only meet once a month. Maybe we should go back to twice a month. But
You're repeating yourself a lot, but go ahead.
No, I'm addressing some things that came up. Jobs, to say that your loss in jobs, the net gain in jobs would go up. I mean, it would grow across. Cape Canaveral would create more jobs. And to say that a food truck doesn't love their city, these food trucks love their city, and I understand your concern about them coming back, but we cannot, as a governing body, say that he who pays more, or he who gives more, gets more. You have a seat tax because you get a seat. Lewis, maybe he pays a seat tax too for the 4 or 5 that he has. I'm not advocating for that, but he's going to get those seats. And so, you know, it'll all work itself out. I hope that council says, yeah, let's dig into food trucks. Let's see how we can do this the right way. And I'm supportive, and I'm rather excited about how it can actually help our existing restaurants. So, thank you.
When you make that amendment, can you make it so that it's Brevard County food trucks instead of outside sources coming in?
I think it's a good starting point, yeah. It's better than what we have today. Yeah, sorry.
Is it fair for people from Orlando to come in and take money out of our county? That's where I'm at with it. That's why I'm upset about it.
And I guess the only thing that I have a concern is the time restraints that we are putting on food trucks and the proximity restraints. They're only allowed at this place at this time. If we can release the time restraints and release the proximity, we can offer a better service to our residents. Because if you poll the residents too, you'll see that the majority of the residents want more options and places to eat. So that's
okay. Can we move on?
Yeah.
We are 9:15. We still have one other
it's going to go fast.
topic to address.
I'm finished. I'd like to make well, Rocky, I don't know if you
What?
want to chime in. I don't think, but
I haven't had a chance yet. Go ahead.
I'm finished. I'm in. Good.
Okay. I guess I have a different perspective on this. I see the value of a business, any business, coming into a city, becoming involved in the city, if they're financially able or however they start, and providing employment, providing service. I have talked to some of the people from the Orlando area, Maitland, Castleberry, that schedule the trucks over here. And you're correct, and I guess the city manager is correct too. The reason they don't enjoy coming here, although they have to come periodically, and they're on a rotating status with that group over there, is because they don't make enough money. It's the end of the story. They buy the food over there, they gas up a truck, they put propane in or whatever they need. They come over here and sell what they have, good, bad, or whatever, and then they go back, and the money goes right back out of the city with them. We've had some experience here with some unhappy food truck owners that have poured grease down the drain. That's what started all this about 2017, when we said, wow, you know, who did that? Well, we know but couldn't prove it. It's a serious problem, but I guess I would lean towards the business that provides a restroom, provides a place to park, provides employment for 25 people or whatever, gives back to the community. And just because Jeff is here, and I got a letter from KP Elementary School, and you mentioned that. And I'll just read a paragraph on it. We're very grateful for your continued commitment and support. This is from Mrs. Keene, principal at Capeview. And she goes on to say, our pre-K playground for 3- and 4-year-olds was condemned due to visible safety concerns. That made our task even harder since we were in need of 2 playgrounds at the same time. Local businesses such as Southern Charm helped start the fundraising campaign to secure enough funds for 2 playgrounds. I don't believe there's any food truck coming from Orlando that's done that kind of work. But all in all, we do allow food trucks if they have a permit, am I right?
Second Saturday of the month, too.
The answer,
Do they come
the
because-
answer is food trucks can come to Friday Fest, pay the $50
Yes.
fee, and they have restrooms available, parking, facilities, garbage and trash services and everything. And then the same thing occurs with the other food truck event. And those are the issues of primary concern. I'm curious about a process point of view because the Planning and Zoning Board has weighed in on this. And they decided not to advance any initiative forward to the city council about food trucks. Is that correct, David? And I think that
Tell me
might have-
what they did. David, please.
Yeah. Frankly, I mean, if we're gonna be fully transparent here and pull all our cards out on the table, I at the time, I kind of liked the idea of food trucks, and I wanted to bring it because I was having to tell people no constantly. And I brought that item to the Planning and Zoning Board because I wanted to see an ordinance change. And the P&Z shut me down and said, nope, that's something we are not interested in pursuing.
Well-
And so it died right there.
I think that's the residents of the city speaking because that's who they are, and their opinion is the people. Louis, I've eaten your food and it's excellent.
That's not the rest.
Well, no, wait, I'm done. Mr. Chair, I'll yield to you.
Louis, you got your 3 minutes. We're pressed for time. I understand your commitment.
Yeah.
And it was fair to everybody. Let them have their 3 minutes. I allowed you your 3 minutes, and nothing.
I've seen people tuck up more time too, but I just wanted to just say this, that ice cream shop, they approached me once and wanted me to come there. There's no restaurant around there.
Okay.
And so, what's the
Okay.
issue?
Okay.
I do believe that there is a restaurant moving to the gas station, the car wash property. Am I correct, Mr. Morley?
Talk about Twisty Treat.
Twisty Treat? Oh, okay, I'm sorry, I misunderstood.
But I think the issue that this underscores is a lot of these existing businesses that we do want to support are saying they're having a hard enough time already, this is going to hurt them. The majority, about 80% of them say that.
Okay.
Well,
Sort of like the Amazon
I think that
effect,
was
huh?
the Planning and Zoning Board's opinion. They're local people, they watch them come, work hard, and be successful. The ones that survive the restaurant business is a challenge, I'm sure. And, okay, that's all I'll say. I think we're trying to solve a problem that we don't have. I don't know there's that many people wanting to bring food trucks into our city.
Can we move forward? Okay.
Yeah, and if there's no one else, I'll just wrap it up. It is an absolute myth. And first of all, we have a new planning and zoning board, and Mr. Friedman was for it, who's no longer there, and we've got some more people. So if you want to bring it back through P&Z, I would love that opportunity. The next thing, we have a huge opportunity here to help people like Louis. So to say yes to the 10 to 12 restaurants and to say no to the 10 to 12 food trucks, that's not our job, and I find this to be very concerning. The lawsuits are coming out over and over again. This is what we call protectionism. This is protecting local restaurants. It is not our job as the government to pick winners and losers in business. It's our job to make sure that food is safe and that people are safe. That is it.
Okay, can we?
And when we start to fund winners and losers and say, no, only let these types in, we're going to get ourselves in a bad.
But we
bad
didn't.
Okay,
we didn't
can we
vote
move?
on
So I would like to make
Let's
yes,
move
a
forward.
motion. I'm making it to move, it's just to move for Anthony to draft. He's already got some ordinances already drafted. So I'd like to take a look at what he's already had with the council's approval.
No, wait, this is only a discussion tonight. We're not taking motion.
So
This is a discussion.
in the direction by consensus vote that I'm asking for, I'm asking in respecting this council to say, do we want, here, I'll
Well,
start over.
hey-
Do we want Anthony to work on drafting or showing us the ordinances that he's worked on in the past? And also,
Okay, this was a discussion presented by you, Mr. Morrison.
Yep.
I think the council doesn't have to do anything on a discussion. You're requesting that they move forward and give you a consensus or a vote, that we're not required to do that. I think we, at this time, I need to talk to people in our community and see what their take is, and also do some studying myself. So at this time, I would make a motion that we move on to the next
I think that's
next topic.
that's a proper procedure because we as a council don't make motions on items that come up for discussion. It has to be publicly advertised so the people know. They're going to decide.
Anthony, would you please set the record straight here? And do we have the ability to direct you in a discussion item to draft an ordinance?
Yes.
Thank you.
Again, do we have the option as a council to go ahead and say that we're going to go ahead and move forward and not take a vote on it?
Yes.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we table this discussion. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay,
And it
let's
doesn't even need to be a vote, so.
let's move forward. Councilman Morrison.
Yep, and the final one was a very simple procedural thing that this doesn't have to take long.
Wait a minute. Is there another one?
We don't, it's not a vote, it's just a discussion. So
Can I make a motion that due to the late time that we go ahead and table that also?
Yeah, I'm happy to table the final one.
Okay.
I think we have a procedural
Hey,
question.
just from procedure, I thought I heard a motion to table
Yeah.
and a second.
Yes, we
So
did.
because it was a second, the motion to table needs to be dispensed with and voted upon.
Okay.
Because it matters procedurally. If it's tabled, that means theoretically, the council can vote to take it off the table in the future.
Okay.
Okay, rather than taking no action on it. So you need to vote on the motion, Mayor
Okay.
Pro Tem.
Thank you.
And that's item number 9.
Yes. May I have a roll call
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
for the tabling, is that correct?
It's tabling.
Yes,
Yes.
okay.
On food trucks, tabling the item.
Mayor Hogue, Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Councilmember Randalls,
Against.
Councilmember Raymond.
4.
Okay, and the next thing I'd like to make a motion that we forego discussion on item 10 due to lack of time. And can I get a motion on that?
To table it? Or-
To table it at this time?
I'll second that.
Can I get the roll call, Madam Clerk?
Mayor Pro Tem Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue, Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Councilmember Randalls,
For the motion to table.
Councilmember Raymond.
4.
Okay, due to the late 9:30, are there really any reports that are that important that we can't maybe go ahead and do them next time?
I'll make a motion to not have any discussions and make them really elaborate on the next time.
Okay, I'll agree to that. Only thing I'll go ahead and say, I want to congratulate Councilman Morrison's daughter on being selected Student of the Month at Cape View. And with that, can I go ahead and get an adjournment?
Thank you.
Thank you.